Chapter 867, Sword Dao, 1. Lingtian had witnessed the battle and his killing intent was already on the shorty. Dragons had reverse scales, and their reverse scales were their family and wife. To think that someone would look at Huangfu Yuyan and the others with such a gaze. They were simply courting death. However, he wouldn't touch him now. He would kill him in one strike after his true essence was exhausted by the 2-second firmament martial gods. There was no need for him to be angry at trash like this. Moreover, this shorty was a super powerhouse at the 3rd level of the martial god realm. His strength could not be ignored. Since there were powerhouses fighting, he couldn't wait for the other party to suffer heavy losses. Rumble. Golden Butterfly continued to attack the 2-second sky martial god realm experts. With a loud explosion, the myriad returning sword formation was destroyed, and tens of thousands of sharp swords scattered in all directions. Yang Xiaoyao was also blasted away. His expression became extremely solemn. He did not expect his trump card to be broken by the other party. It must be known that ordinary experts, even those at the 3rd sky of the martial god realm, would be at a disadvantage in front of the myriad returning swords. However, they had never expected that this cloudy mountain child's golden butterfly would be so domineering. Bang! With another muffled sound, Yang Xiaoyao was sent flying. Qian Tu alone could not withstand Cloudy Mountain Boy's attack at all. He flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood. Hee, in front of me, any sword Dao is trash. Cloudy Mountain Boy looked at Yang Xiaoyao's 10,000 swords with disdain. A while ago, he had suffered a loss in front of Sword Xiu. This was also the first time he had suffered a loss. Now, seeing experts who used swords as weapons would anger him. Humph, Cloudy Mountain Boy, is the sword of my senior brother, Mr. Divine Sword, still trembling now? Yang Xiaoyao was furious when he heard that Cloudy Mountain Boy had insulted a swordsman. He thought back to 30 years ago when Cloudy Mountain Boy was extremely powerful. However, in front of Sword Young Master, he had almost vanished into thin air. If he hadn't used a secret technique to escape, Cloudy Mountain Boy would have definitely disappeared under that strike. Now that he mentioned Cloudy Mountain Boy's sore spot, Yang Xiaoyao's face revealed an excited smile. He circulated all the true essence in his body to the extreme, and a long sword appeared in his hand. His entire aura turned into sword intent, and the air was ravaged by the sword intent. Damn it! Young Master Shenjian is a 5th firmament martial god expert and one of the 10 great young masters of the divine continent. If it weren't for the fact that his cultivation base is higher than mine, he wouldn't be able to defeat me with his sword. Do you think he defeated me in the Tao of the sword? Huh, what a joke. There's no sword principle in this world. It's just that your divine sword sect has made it sound so mysterious. When Cloudy Mountain Boy heard about Sword Young Master, he revealed a fearful expression. He looked around and was subconsciously stunned. He was afraid of Sword Young Master from the bottom of his heart. The power of that sword could be said to be able to destroy the world. Even he, Cloudy Mountain Boy, had almost disappeared into thin air. Now that he thought about it, his heart still trembled. The magnificence of that sword strike had left a shadow in his heart forever. Otherwise, he would have broken through to the 4th firmament of the war god realm long ago. Hearing Yang Xiaoyao use Sword Prince to scare him and poke at his sore spot, he was instantly enraged. If you say you don't have a sword path, then let's try my spiritual sword. At this moment, Yang Xiaoyao had already unleashed all the sword intent in his body. The destructive sword intent wreaked havoc in the space. With a wave of his hand, a massive sword light shot toward the boy with a tearing force. The space trembled, and the sound was shocking. However, Huangfu Yuyan and the others saw Lingtian shake his head with disdain. Immediately, the girls understood that Lingtian disdained Yang Xiaoyao's sword intent. He was not a swordsman at all. Such a move might look powerful, but it was useless. As expected, the shocking sword light tore through the space and fiercely bombarded little boy Yunshan. The sword light split the space into 2 halves with a shocking momentum, causing the expression on Cloudy Mountain Child's face to turn ugly. With a flick of his finger, a stream of blood essence flew out and entered the golden butterfly. Immediately, the golden butterfly exploded with a dazzling golden light that welcomed the sword energy. Kacha! Kacha! Boom! Pft! A cracking sound rang out in the air, as if space had been torn apart. After 2 cracking sounds, the sword light disappeared, and the golden light disappeared. Yang Xiaoyao was ruthlessly bombarded. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his sword fell to the ground. His body swayed as he landed on the ground. The sword will on his body disappeared, and home of heaven and earth fell silent. The 2 second firmament war gods stood at the side, and their eyes revealed terrified expressions. They looked at Cloudy Mountain Boy without moving. However, Cloudy Mountain Boy's gaze was directed at Lingtian. When he saw Huangfu Yuyan and the rest of the peerless beauties, his eyes shone with an evil glint. Junior, you can scram now. Leave these girls behind, and the group will let you go. The few of you will follow me from now on. In the future, I will let you enjoy endless glory and wealth. Cloudy Mountain Boy stared at Tang Qingyue and the others, his eyes wide. He had been a womanizer in his life and had met countless women. He had seen all kinds of top-grade women, but he had never seen such a peerless beauty. Every one of them was rare in the world. He did not expect so many people to gather at once. This was simply heaven. For a moment, Cloud Mountain Boy regarded the 6 girls as goddesses of the 9 heavens. Get lost. Lingtian looked at Cloudy Mountain Boy with a world of ice on one side and a world of flames on the other. 2 balls of destructive light were actually in his eyes. This gaze immediately made Cloudy Mountain Boy tremble. The cold voice sounded as if it came from hell. His voice carried a hint of dignity, a dignity that could not be easily offended. Junior, you are courting death. Cloudy Mountain Boy did not expect a martial saint powerhouse to be so arrogant in front of him. Even though he had seen Lingtian earn so many spiritual stones a few days ago, he did not think that it was Lingtian who earned it because Lingtian had people from the Biming and Lin families by his side. Now that the Lin family and Biming family were no longer around, they naturally would not be afraid of a second Sky Marshal Saint Jr. As long as he eliminated this junior, he would be able to obtain astonishing wealth and these few beauties. He didn't even think about the background of these girls. As soon as he finished speaking, a destructive pressure came crashing down on Lingtian. For a second Sky of the Martial Saint realm, he only needed a wave of pressure to crush him to death. It was only by crushing Lingtian like this that he could show off his tall image in front of the beauties. However, he did not know that he was not tall at all despite being only 4 feet tall. Heavenly Demon Region, the might of heaven and earth. Lingtian found it funny when he saw Cloudy Mountain Boy suppressing him with his pressure. Immediately, the Heavenly Demon Region was unleashed. A shocking power of heaven and earth erupted, and a shocking pressure bombarded the pressure of Child Yunshan. Rumble. The pressure was formless, but the martial god expert could see it clearly. The destructive power of heaven and earth directly offset the pressure of Cloudy Mountain Boy. Lingtian's power of heaven and earth was extremely terrifying to begin with. Even a martial god powerhouse could not compare to it. Furthermore, Cloudy Mountain Boy did not use his full strength. With just one strike, he was at a disadvantage. His body was thrown backward, and his expression was extremely ugly. Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu were both shocked by this situation. They did not expect Lingtian to be so powerful that he could defeat Cloudy Mountain Boy, a 3rd firmament martial god, with his pressure. It should be noted that the trio had failed to resist Cloudy Mountain Boy's pressure when they joined forces. Lingtian was a 2nd firmament martial saint. Without Lin Zhirong and Bei Mingshu's protection, he was actually this terrifying. If they were to defeat Cloudy Mountain Boy with their pressure, the gap between them and Lingtian would be too great to be described. Are you a swordsman? Lingtian used his pressure to repel Cloudy Mountain Boy. He then looked at Yang Xiaoyao with a calm expression and a smile on his face. Just now, this Cloud Mountain boy was careless and was easily repelled. He had already defeated the other party psychologically. Now, as long as he provoked him, he had some confidence in defeating him. That's right, I'm a sword cultivator. Yang Xiaoyao was puzzled by Li Lingtian's question. He did not give a single answer, but he felt a tinge of anger in his heart after he answered. Li Lingtian's words clearly showed that he was doubting his identity. For a sword cultivator to be suspected of being fake was a blow to his sword cultivation. Swordsman? If Sword Young Master was here, perhaps he would dare to call himself a sword cultivator. In front of me, Sword Young Master doesn't deserve to call himself a sword cultivator. You'll know in the future whether there's a sword Dao in this world. I'll show you what a sword Dao is. Li Lingtian's tone was one of denial before he burst out laughing. He looked at Yang Xiaoyao indifferently and said coldly. His voice was like a sharp sword that pierced straight into his heart. As a sword principle expert, he could feel Li Lingtian's terror. This terror came from his sword, a terrifying sword. Yang Xiaoyao was furious. His hatred for Li Lingtian was bone deep. He was humiliated by Cloudy Mountain Boy earlier, and now Li Lingtian was insulting him again. This was intolerable. He glared at Li Lingtian, but his heart trembled when he saw Li Lingtian. Because in his eyes, that young man was no longer a young man, but a divine sword that stood proudly between heaven and earth, a divine sword that could destroy heaven and earth, a divine sword that could destroy everything. This feeling made him feel that everything was an illusion, but he believed that this feeling was real. This was because he had met someone in the sect. When he saw him, he had the same feeling. It was Sword Young Master. She was stunned as she stared at Li Lingtian blankly. At that moment, Li Lingtian's gaze shifted to Cloudy Mountain Boy. His icy gaze was as sharp as a sword. Boom! There was a dull thud between heaven and earth as Li Lingtian's body burst forth with a destructive sword will that filled the entire sky. At the same time, Li Lingtian's body burst forth with the metal will of the Great Path. The combination of the metal will of the Great Path and the sword will cause the entire world to tear apart. Just the sword intent alone was able to tear the sky apart. The power was unimaginable. At this moment, Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu were shocked. The expression on Cloudy Mountain Boy's face also became strange. A martial saint actually had such terrifying sword intent. He secretly thought that this world really had sword arts. At the same time, Cloudy Mountain Child felt an illusion. When this young man displayed this sword intent, it was as if he had returned to 30 years ago when he met the Sword Young Master. One sword strike destroyed his mind and left a shadow behind forever. Chapter 868, Battle Between Experts. 1. Good, good, very good. I want to see how powerful you are. Cloudy Mountain Boy felt the destructive sword intent in the air. This sword intent was many times stronger than Yang Xiaoyao's sword intent at the beginning. The two of them were on completely different levels. The sword intent of a second sky martial saint was actually stronger than that of a second sky martial god. What kind of concept was this? It was completely beyond his imagination. At this moment, he did not dare to be careless anymore. It would not be good if he failed in the gutter. Immediately after, he circulated the true essence in his entire body to the limit. The domineering power of the third firmament war god realm was displayed. The sword intent in the air was repelled by the power of the third firmament war god. For a moment, Cloudy Mountain Boy's body emitted a faint halo, and he looked extremely mystical. Looks like you should be with Sword Young Master. Since that's the case, you should know this move. Sword Howl Heaven and Earth. Li Lingtian's sword will burst forth from his body. The destructive sword will and the metal Dao intent merged together, giving him an even more overbearing power. At this moment, he stretched out his hand and the divine martial black heavenly sword appeared in front of him. He reached out and grabbed the divine martial black heavenly sword. The divine weapon's shocking pressure pressed down on the Cloud Mountain Child. The divine martial profound heaven sword was a world-destroying sword. Just this pressure alone was not something that an ordinary expert could withstand. One had to know that this divine martial black heavenly sword was the most mysterious and powerful treasure in the divine martial continent. He held the divine martial black heavenly sword in his hand and sent out a terrifying true essence. He waved his hand. The sword intent changed, turning into a mysterious sword aura. Instantly, a sword beam slashed out with sword momentum. Between heaven and earth, this sword beam seemed to follow the trajectory of heaven and earth. The first move of the heaven-destroying sword formation, Sword Howl, was displayed. Sword Force. It's actually a sword aura. Yang Xiaoyao was shocked when he saw the divine martial black heaven sword in Li Lingtian's hand and the sword radiance that he unleashed. He did not expect Li Lingtian to cultivate sword force, which was even more terrifying and mysterious than sword intent. Any move in the world had its momentum. Controlling the momentum meant controlling the trajectory of the move and attack. The opponent simply could not block such an attack. The sword light was like a beam of light as it slashed down at the Cloud Mountain Boy. Cloudy Mountain Boy's face was filled with shock. At this time, he was already shocked to the point of no return. This was because Li Lingtian had unleashed sword intent and wielded a powerful divine weapon. What was even more unexpected was that Li Lingtian had managed to control the momentum of the sword. With one strike, the sword radiance locked onto him, leaving him no chance to defend himself. Golden Butterfly Double Shadow, Change. Seeing the destructive sword light descend, the terrifying sword light was like divine might, giving him no chance to resist. At this moment, he no longer dared to underestimate this martial saint powerhouse. His divine sense moved, and his finger waved. The three golden butterflies flashed, and in the end, the golden butterflies formed a line and a destructive golden light shot towards the sword light. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded. The golden light dissipated, and the sword light also disappeared at this time. However, the destructive sword intent wreaked havoc in the air. Cloudy Mountain Boy was the target of the attack. Although he had relied on his third heaven cultivation and the terrifying power of the golden butterfly to block it, the destructive sword intent tore his entire body apart. Instantly, his clothes were torn apart, and he looked as ugly as a beggar. Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu gasped in shock. They were completely stunned by this result. A martial saint expert who controlled a divine artifact, sword intent, and sword aura, and used sword howl to fight even a martial god. In the beginning, he was at the second firmament of the war god realm, and his myriad returning swords was defeated. Now, a second firmament martial saint had actually beaten up a third firmament war god, little boy Yun Shan, to such a state. This was the difference between them. Comparisons were infuriating. Sword Dao, this is only the first move. You'll know how powerful the sword Dao is when you see the real myriad of swords returning to the origin. After Li Lingtian swung his sword, his expression remained calm. It had been a long time since he used sword howl of the heavens and earth. He had no intention of using it to destroy the third firmament martial god. If he had such intentions, he would not be Li Lingtian. Looking at the power of the sword howl heaven and earth, which had destroyed the golden light of Cloudy Mountain Child, he was extremely satisfied. All of this was the power of the divine martial black heavenly sword and the power of the sword whistling through the heavens and earth. This power was comparable to the third heaven of the martial god realm and could be said to be heaven-defying. As the sound of his voice faded, his entire person floated up. His appearance was extremely carefree, and his body was like a sharp sword, giving off an invincible aura. The heavenly sword physique. In front of the heavenly sword physique, all sword techniques can be transformed into miracles. Li Lingtian said calmly without unleashing the divine martial black heaven sword in his hand. Instead, the aura around his entire body changed. His entire person was like a sharp sword that could fuse with all the sharp swords in the world. Outsiders couldn't see through the heavenly sword physique at all, but Yang Xiaoyao, who was a sword cultivator, had a drastic change in expression as if he had seen a ghost. Heavenly sword body, heavenly sword body. It's really the heavenly sword physique. It's really the heavenly sword physique. The heavenly sword physique that the sword saint of the divine sword sect mentioned has finally appeared. The heavenly sword physique has finally appeared. Yang Xiaoyao looked at Li Lingtian and his entire person went into a daze. Then, he burst into laughter with a look of excitement that was almost insanity. This situation shocked Xian Tu and Cloudy Mountain Boy. One could imagine how terrifying and magical the heavenly sword physique was. It must be a heaven-defying physique. Even if he didn't know how powerful and terrifying the heavenly sword body was, just from the name, it was obvious that it wasn't a simple physique. While the three of them were still in shock, Li Lingtian's body began to slowly spin in the air. The divine martial black heaven sword in his hand floated in front of him and spun with Li Lingtian. At this moment, a stream of light flashed between Li Lingtian's brows. The heavenly one sword, the heavenly universe sword, and the heavenly fault sword had appeared. The three heavenly swords and the divine martial heavenly sword were connected. The four swords revolved around Li Lingtian with him at the center. The sword light was incomparably sharp, and the air was torn into pieces. At the same time, Li Lingtian slowly extended his right hand and a ball of light appeared in his palm. Yang Xiaoyao looked at the ball of light, and his expression became even more excited. Because he also cultivated the myriad returning swords, he naturally knew what was inside this ball of light. As expected, the ball of light in Li Lingtian's palm exploded and tens of thousands of sharp swords floated in the air. The world was filled with sword intent and sword light. This space had completely become a world of swords. Tens of thousands of sharp swords revolved around Li Lingtian, forming a world of swords. The long sword had a slight connection with Li Lingtian and was extremely intimate with him. This was the advantage of the heavenly sword physique. He could control any sharp sword in the world. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At that moment, Yang Xiaoyao did not have the time to collect the long swords that were scattered on the ground. However, they flew up automatically and entered the sword world beside Li Lingtian. The terrifying sword light, destructive sword qi, and mysterious sword silk instantly fused completely at this moment, forming a mysterious halo. These halos were completely formed by sharp swords. The space and air were cut into pieces by the sword silks. The world trembled in front of this sword formation. 10,000 swords returned to the origin. This is the true 10,000 swords returned to the origin. Myriad returning swords is only the most basic thing in the sword formation. If you want to see the real sword formation, then you have to take this move from me. Don't disappoint me. It's been a long time since I've used a divine ability like this. Li Lingtian spoke calmly as if he was preaching. His voice was extremely calm, but there was a tinge of loneliness in his voice. It was the loneliness of an expert. Facing a third Sky Martial God Realm expert, a second Sky Martial Saint Realm expert actually said something like that. It had completely turned the world upside down. Qian Tu and Yang Xiaoyao were completely stunned. Everything in front of them was already an illusion or a dream. Since that's the case, I'll take this move of yours and see how powerful you are. You are the strongest martial saint I have ever seen. You should be the strongest martial saint in the entire divine martial continent, right? However, it's impossible for you to kill me. The power of yin and yang, insight into the world. Heavenly abode divine star border. Cloudy Mountain Boy no longer dared to view Li Lingtian as a weakling. Even if Li Lingtian was only a martial saint, he could be said to be the #1 martial saint in the divine martial continent. Meeting such a heaven-defying martial saint was indeed beyond his expectations. He did not expect such a terrifying martial saint to exist in this world. Facing the terrifying myriad returning swords, his heart trembled. He didn't dare to be careless at all, because he felt that if he was careless, he would disappear into thin air. Although he said it casually, he was still extremely fearful in his heart. He waved his hands, and the shocking power of the third firmament of the war god realm instantly erupted. 9 beams of divine aura descended from space. The divine aura turned into light and the 9 beams of light quickly fused. In the end, the fused beam of light quickly shot toward Lingtian. At the same time, a pitch-black shield appeared in front of him and shielded him. Boom! Lingtian pointed with one hand and the myriad returning swords burst forth. Instantly, tens of thousands of sharp swords tore through the air. Each sword was connected to each other, and the sword silks, sword radiance, and sword aura tore through space. The distance between the two of them was less than 5 miles. To two heaven-defying experts, this distance was completely insignificant. Space was torn apart, and a shocking explosion erupted. The earth collapsed and the mountains shook. Even the Qin Palace in the distant lake began to tremble. Qian Tu and Yang Xiaoyao were both second sky martial god realm experts. However, at this moment, they were completely stunned by the battle between the two people in the air. Rumble. Sisi, Sisi. Huff, huff, huff. Kacha, kacha. The light and the sword formation collided, and countless mysterious sounds suddenly appeared in the air. The sword chi, sword light, and sword silks emitted by the sword formation continuously cut the light into pieces and eventually devoured it. Wherever the myriad returning swords passed, everything was cut into pieces and eventually devoured, even the air. Boom! At this moment, there was a loud explosion. The heavenly abode divine star border was completely destroyed by the myriad returning swords. Everything was devoured by the myriad returning swords. Cloud Mountain Boy's shield burst out with a strange light, which collided with the sword formation. The sword formation disappeared, and the 10,000 swords trembled. Cloudy Mountain Boy was thrown out. Chapter 869, Cloudy Mountain Boy, Death, 1. The sword intent in the air remained, but the sword formation quickly trembled and finally collapsed. Lingtian's expression was calm and the smile on his lips remained. However, Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu were shocked beyond words. A second sky martial saint had used a sword formation to repel a third sky martial god. This was the power of the sword formation's sword Dao. It could allow a martial saint to fight against a martial god. It could even break through the powerful attack of a third firmament martial god like just now and even send people flying. Cloud Boy's face was deathly pale, and he looked extremely ugly. At this moment, he was indeed extremely shocked. He never expected that his attack and defense would be defeated by the other party in one move. In the end, if it weren't for the fact that he was a powerful third firmament war god, he would definitely have been destroyed by this attack and dissipated into thin air. As expected, it's not simple. Compared to that trash's sword Dao, it's on a completely different level. However, the stronger you are, the more I want to kill you. Metal Dao intent, golden butterfly heaven splitting. Cloudy Mountain Boy was shocked in his heart. At this moment, he had already lost his face. Moreover, this young man's cultivation was too terrifying. If this continued, he might fail miserably. Moreover, the Qin Palace was right in front of him. He could not let any accidents happen. He would first use his trump card to kill this young man before going to the Qin Palace. No matter the price, he had to kill this young man. As for the two second firmament martial god realm experts behind him, he did not put them in his eyes at all. With a flick of his divine sense, a scarlet pill appeared in front of him. Without any hesitation, he threw the pill into his mouth. Instantly, a shocking power erupted, and the true origin that he had consumed was instantly restored. Moreover, his cultivation base rapidly soared, and he only stopped when he reached the peak of the third level of the war god realm. The 3 golden butterflies flashed and Cloudy Mountain Boy flicked his fingers continuously. A destructive aura appeared in the world, the clouds changed color, and the wind disappeared. The entire world seemed to be exquisite. The strange aura in the air was extremely oppressive. The golden butterfly soared into the sky and disappeared. However, a destructive roar came from the depths of the sky. The shocking pressure formed a distorted shape and bombarded downwards. However, the pressure stopped in midair. The golden butterfly quickly absorbed the pressure, and the pressure of the world continued to enter the golden butterfly. The 3 golden butterflies exploded, and the golden wool in the air reached its limit. After the golden butterflies exploded, they formed a golden sword. The long sword formed a 100-meter-long sword light in the air, which stirred up the pressure of the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. Yang Xiaoyao, Qian Tu, Huangfu Yuyan, and the others were extremely shocked, and they saw the situation in the sky. The attack unleashed by a 3rd heaven martial god was indeed powerful and heaven-defying. It was capable of overturning rivers and seas and destroying the heavens and earth. Lingtian was shocked to the core as he looked at the scene in the sky. This attack was definitely a divine ability of the saint level. When a 3rd firmament war god used a saint-tier divine power, its might could destroy the world. At this moment, he did not dare to hesitate anymore. His eyes flickered. The 3rd heavenly layer of the war god realm is the 3rd heavenly layer. I've already killed 2 of them. I don't mind killing you. I can feel your killing intent, so you can't stay. Lingtian replied indifferently. His face was calm and the smile on his lips remained. This tone, this voice, to Yang Xiaoyao and the others, it was a complete mockery. At first, Cloudy Mountain Boy said that Lingtian could not be kept alive. The tables had turned, but Lingtian had taken back his words. This was undoubtedly a resounding slap to Cloudy Mountain Boy's face. However, this slap was no longer a big deal because one person would die after the battle. It would either be Lingtian and the others or Cloudy Mountain Boy. Both of them were extremely curious as they looked at Lingtian expectantly. He wondered how Lingtian could withstand this move and how he could kill Cloudy Mountain Boy. If Lingtian were to fail, the 2 of them would only be killed by Cloudy Mountain Boy. They were now looking forward to Lingtian killing Cloudy Mountain Boy. Rumble. In the air, Cloudy Mountain Boy's attacks shook the space as Lingtian's shocking sword will burst forth. With a wave of his hand, the myriad swords turned into a stream of light and vanished from Lingtian's body. Lingtian's eyes flashed as the long swords vanished. He then activated his divine consciousness. The divine martial profound heaven sword, 3 heavenly swords, and 5 divine weapon longswords appeared. A total of 9 longswords floated in front of him. The 9 swords spun continuously, and a destructive pressure was emitted from the 9 swords. Among the 9 swords, 1 was a peerless ancient divine artifact, 3 were heavenly swords, and the remaining 5 were divine artifacts. Such a combination was simply destructive. Each of these swords was something that would cause countless powerhouses to fight over. However, Lingtian had managed to gather all of them together. The more it was like this, the more excited Yang Xiaoyao's eyes became. As a sword expert, he naturally wanted to see the most powerful sword move. It was the first time in his life that he had seen Lingtian in such a state. Sword Dao isn't just sword moves. The sword formation is the most powerful existence. Heaven-destroying sword formation 99 Heaven-destroying sword formation. Lingtian's calm voice came out of his mouth. It was a plain voice, but it was like thunder in Yang Xiaoyao's ears. His eyes were filled with shock, as if he had seen a ghost. This was because the heaven-destroying sword formation was the mysterious cultivation technique of the divine sword sect. However, he did not expect it to appear on an unfamiliar young man. Moreover, it was cultivated by this young man. However, at this moment, what he wanted to see more was how powerful this young man was and to what extent. The extent of one's sword Dao cultivation was related to the safety of the divine sword sect. At that moment, Cloudy Mountain Boy's destructive attack was aimed at Lingtian. The space began to tear apart. Countless cracks appeared, and endless astral winds wreaked havoc in the space. The destructive attack locked onto Lingtian's aura. Lingtian could not dodge it even if he wanted to. He was shocked when he saw the destructive attack falling on Lingtian as he had yet to unleash his defense or attack. With this move, not to mention a second Sky Martial Saint, even a 3rd or 4th Sky Martial God would be killed. However, just as they were worried, Lingtian's entire body changed as he activated his terrifying divine consciousness. The 9 swords began to spin rapidly. Li Lingtian's 10 fingers flicked as a series of mysterious hand seals were cast. Instantly, the 9 swords emitted sword chi, sword light, and sword silk. The sword chi, sword light, and sword silk formed a red pillar of light that could destroy the world. The air within a radius of several miles was devoured, and the light pillar grew stronger and stronger. Following which, Li Lingtian guided the destructive beam of light with one hand and it slashed down at Cloudy Mountain Boy's attack. Space was destroyed in front of this pillar of light. The air between heaven and earth turned sharp because Li Lingtian's light beam was a sword ray, a destructive sword ray, a sword ray that could destroy everything in the world. Boom! In an instant, the 2 attacks collided. Pfft! The earth trembled and collapsed. Yang Xiaoyao and the other were also torn apart by the destructive force. At this moment, the 2 of them were already stunned. Huangfu Yuyan and the others used their terrifying defenses to resist the tearing force. In the world, everything within a radius of 100 miles had already turned into nothingness, and everything had been flattened. Li Lingtian spat out a mouthful of blood. The 9 swords had returned to him before they transformed into a stream of light and entered his dantian. Tang Qingyue retreated backward and finally arrived beside Huangfu Yuyan and the others. She supported Li Lingtian and suspended him in the air, using her terrifying defense to resist the destructive force. In the sky, the golden light was still there. The expression on Cloud Mountain Boy's face kept changing. Fear appeared in his eyes, and in the end, it turned into despair. In the end, his eyes turned ashen and his body swayed in the air. Both Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu were shocked to see Cloudy Mountain Boy's expression. They were shocked as they did not expect Li Lingtian's sword to be so terrifying. It was beyond their imagination. This sword had even blocked a 3rd Firmament Martial God's trump card, and it had even shocked Child Cloudy Mountain. It was just that he didn't know if Cloudy Mountain Boy was injured. The sky was temporarily quiet. The force had disappeared. Everything was silent. Everyone's eyes were looking at the Cloud Mountain Boy in the sky. They were waiting for the final result to determine who was stronger. Phew! A gust of wind blew through the air. Cloudy Mountain Boy, who was originally floating in the air, quickly turned into fragments and disappeared. This situation left Yang Xiaoyao and the other 2 dumbfounded. In the end, their mouths were wide open, unable to believe all of this. Then, he rubbed his eyes, hoping that everything he saw was an illusion. However, it was all true. They were initially shocked that Li Lingtian was strong enough to fight against a 3rd Firmament Martial God. They never expected Li Lingtian to destroy Cloudy Mountain Boy with a single strike. However, he was still intact even after his destruction. If it were not for the breeze, they would not have known what happened to Cloudy Mountain Boy. Ah! The 2 of them could not help but exclaim in surprise. Their expressions turned extremely ugly as they looked at Li Lingtian as if they were looking at the devil. There was still such a terrifying powerhouse in this world, such an abnormal martial saint powerhouse. To think that you cultivate the sword Dao. With such a poor state of mind, you might as well not cultivate the sword Dao to avoid harming yourself. Li Lingtian snorted in disdain as he spoke indifferently. He glared at Yang Xiaoyao coldly. From the beginning to the end, he was extremely calm. Even if he didn't cultivate the Ice Soul martial spirit, he could still remain calm at any time, because this was the most basic thing for an expert. With the Ice Soul martial spirit, he could remain calm at any time. This also allowed him to remain calm when facing strong enemies. Thank you for your reminder, sir. May I ask where your sword Dao comes from? Yang Xiaoyao was utterly embarrassed by Li Lingtian's words. He was furious when he saw a 2nd Firmament Martial Saint reprimanding him. However, when he thought of how terrifying Li Lingtian was, he did not dare to get angry anymore. Instead, he thanked Li Lingtian. Although the other party was only at the 2nd sky of the Martial Saint realm, he was a terrifying sword principle expert. He was even more curious about where Li Lingtian's sword doctrine came from. This was also his biggest question. If he could figure out this matter, he would have no regrets even if he couldn't obtain any treasures in the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. Chapter 870, Strange, 1, You don't have the right to know yet. If Sword Young Master is able to defeat me one day, you can ask him. Lingtian looked at Yang Xiaoyao with a smile on his face. Gradually, his gaze turned sharp. He landed on the ground with Huangfu Yuyan and the others and walked in the direction of the palace. In the attack just now, he had used the 19 Annihilating Sword formation. Moreover, he had never used the 19 Annihilating Sword formation to the extreme. This time, it was the real 19 Annihilating Sword formation. You are indeed powerful, but you are still not a match for my senior brother. Yang Xiaoyao did not show the slightest dissatisfaction when he heard Li Lingtian's words. After all, the young man before him was too terrifying. It was so terrifying that he felt his heart tremble. It was the first time a second Sky Martial God powerhouse had seen a martial saint powerhouse so afraid. However, he knew that if this young man were to encounter Sword Young Master, he would really not be a match for him. After all, Sword Young Master had already reached the peak of the fifth heaven. The young man in front of him was only a martial saint, but his sword Dao was terrifying. If this young man were to become a martial god and use the Dao of the sword, there really wouldn't be many people who could suppress him. When I go to the Divine Continent, Sword Young Master will be nothing. I'm 25 years old this year. I hope Sword Young Master won't disappoint me. I'll go and meet him one day. You two can leave now. Sword Young Master is not my match. Sword Saint is my match. Step by step, he came to the edge of the lake. His voice traveled to the back. The further he went, the softer it became. In the end, only he could hear it. It sounded like he was talking to himself, but Yang Xiaoyao heard it. Upon hearing this voice, he was extremely shocked. It seemed that this young man had some understanding of Sword Young Master and Sword Saint. At the very least, he knew Sword Young Master and Sword Saint. The more this was the case, the more shocked Li Lingtian was. He did not know what kind of person this youth was. I shall take my leave. I hope that one day, you can come to the Divine Sword Sect. Yang Xiaoyao did not hesitate. Li Lingtian's strength alone was enough to kill a third firmament martial god in this place. Furthermore, he was not injured at all. How powerful was that? If he stayed, he would definitely be erased. Instead of doing this, it was better to leave this place to avoid offending others. After saying that, his figure flashed and quickly left, finally disappearing into the horizon. Qian too took a glance at Li Lingtian and left without hesitation. None of the martial god powerhouses were fools. Naturally, they knew the situation they were in. If Li Lingtian had not arrived when they first encountered Cloudy Mountain Boy, the two of them would have perished. Now that Li Lingtian had killed Cloudy Mountain Boy, he was even more terrifying than Cloudy Mountain Boy. If he didn't leave, he would be courting death. After the duo left, Li Lingtian did not hesitate to fly toward the palace by the lake. As for Cloudy Mountain Boy's storage pouch, he had already put it away. The palace in front of them was as green as jade, and the dense water spiritual energy was shocking. Li Lingtian's expression turned serious as he looked at the palace. This palace was the Qin Palace of the 9 Temples, and it was also the first palace. Only by obtaining the items in the first palace and taking control of it would he gain the upper hand. You can go in. Well, protect you. Huangfu Yuyan looked at Li Lingtian and exchanged glances with the other girls before she spoke. The Xiaoyao Immortal Palace was extremely mysterious. At first, Li Lingtian obtained a fragment and the even more mysterious Water Dao intent. The Qian Palace and the Qin Palace belonged to the water element. Only by gathering the fragments of the two palaces together could the will of the great path of water be perfected. This was just their guess. Whether it was true or not, they would only know if they looked at it once in a few palaces. If this palace also had a fragment, their guess would be correct. Li Lingtian nodded and walked toward the palace step by step. His entire body soared through the air as he gradually approached the palace. The closer he got to the palace, the more intense the water will became. It was even denser than the Qian Palace. As expected. Looking at the dense will of the great path of water in front of the palace and the terrifying water spiritual energy, his face revealed an excited expression. His guess was right. This Qin Palace also had the Tao intent of water because the Qin Palace and the Qian Palace belonged to water. Now that he had come here, he had also obtained confirmation. At this moment, he no longer hesitated and quickly walked into the palace. The will of the great path of water spread out, allowing the powerful and terrifying will of the great path of water to enter his body and his sea of consciousness. In the palace, a piece of golden paper was constantly emitting a mysterious will. As the broken characters entered his awareness, Lingtian closed his eyes slightly and accepted the tempering of the water will of the way. At that moment, he was completely immersed in the water will of the way. The water Tao intent he had obtained in the past was too shallow. Now, this will of the great path of water was the true will of the great path. Although the Tao intent of water before and after were both Tao intent, the profoundness and depth between the two were completely on a different level. The will of the great path of water that he had obtained in the Qian Palace suddenly became clear. Everything became clear in his sea of consciousness. Water could carry a boat, but it could also capsize it. Water was soft, but when the will of the Tao of water was controlled to the extreme, it could unleash the power of its softness to destroy the world. Water was the most magical attribute in the world, and also the most mysterious existence. Ding dang. With a crisp sound, the golden paper in the air turned into a copper sheet and fell to the ground. Lingtian was already jolted awake. The expression on his face was incomparably excited. The will of the great path of the two palaces had fused together, and the will of the great path of water had reached another level. Now, the will of the great path of water no longer made him feel confused. Instead, it gave him a new understanding and a deeper understanding of the will of the great path of water. He opened his eyes and picked up the fragments on the ground. The fragments were exactly the same as the ones in the Qian Palace. However, the runes on it were different, and so were the engravings. The Qian Palace's fragment had the word Qian while the fragment here had the word Kansas. After obtaining the will of water from the Qian Palace and the Qin Palace, I've gained the initiative. At least, no one else can obtain this will. However, Xiaoyao Immortal Palace opens once every 2,000 years. Why didn't anyone take this will away? Lingtian put away the fragment and allowed Tang Qingyue and the others to enter the palace. They then began to search the place quickly. However, other than some medicinal herbs, there were no other items in this palace. After that, the group of people quickly left the palace and flew into the distance. As he flew, he muttered to himself. This problem had actually appeared in the Qian Palace, but he had not said it out loud. There should be a lot of treasures in Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, but he did not encounter any treasures when he came to the two palaces. Instead, he obtained the will of the Great Path. It was as if this will of the Great Path was specially created for him. The more this was the case, the greater the doubt in his heart. It was because it was impossible for the experts who had entered the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace in the past not to obtain this will. If it was the will of the forbidden land of the Tianhe Zone, it could be explained clearly, because that will could appear again over a long period of time. However, the will of the palace was in the fragment, and the fragment was a physical object. Could it be that even physical objects could appear again? This didn't make sense. This place is full of mysteries. That's right, and there are 99 people who came in. They should be scattered across a wide area. Their goal is most likely to come for the 9 temples. Since they know about the existence of the 9 temples, why has no one obtained this will before? This Tao intent seems to be specially prepared for Big Brother Lingtian. It's better to be careful. If we want to crack this secret, we should wait until all the wills of the 9 temples appear before we know the secret here. However, although we have obtained the will of water from the Qin Palace and gained the initiative, the will of the other palaces will definitely be destroyed if we encounter a heaven-defying expert. After Li Lingtian voiced his question, the girls began to discuss it. They had already thought of this question, but it was not appropriate to voice it out to prevent it from affecting Li Lingtian. Moreover, according to Li Lingtian's conjecture and array Dao deduction, everything was as he had guessed. Not all of these people are here for the 9 temples, but for a certain treasure. However, if we want to obtain this treasure, we have to start from the 9 temples. As long as we control the Qin Palace of the 9 temples, our chances will be higher. However, the people from Xiaoyao Immortal Palace came here randomly. Naturally, they wouldn't come to Qin Palace directly. If they were too far away, no one would come here specifically. Perhaps I'm worrying too much. This fragment doesn't appear every 2,000 years. Li Lingtian said earnestly. Although he said that, he did not think so in his heart. This was because this matter was too strange and too smooth. With such a smooth matter, the other experts should have obtained the will of the Great Path countless times. He would definitely not wait for his arrival unless it was his previous life. However, his previous life was Zheoyang Divine Lord. Zheoyang Divine Lord's soul had already fused, so it was impossible for there to be another soul. Besides, he knew almost everything about Zheoyang Divine Lord's previous life. Although Zheoyang Divine Lord was heaven-defying, he did not know array Dao. It was impossible for him to have any connection with Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. The group flew quickly. This time, they were looking for the Dui Palace and the Kuan Palace. These 2 palaces were the closest to the Qian Palace and the Qin Palace in the 9 temples. According to the 9 temples and 8 trigrams formation, this was a shortcut. The Qian Palace and the Qin Palace in front belonged to the water, the heavenly water. The Dui Palace and the Kuan Palace that he was looking for now were of the fire element, earth fire. Li Lingtian's expression changed at the thought of this as he felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness. This was because the divine power he cultivated was ice and fire. He was the first to obtain the water attribute, and he would have to find the fire attribute next. If there was a conflict between them, it would be difficult. He was inexplicably nervous, and this nervousness made him feel afraid. On the surface, this nervousness was for the ultimate attribute, but the real feeling was from the scrutiny of the outside world. This kind of scrutiny was hidden, and he used his nervousness to cover it up. He covered it up for himself, or rather, some powerful existence that defied the heavens covered it up for him. Anyone else would not have noticed this feeling, but Li Lingtian's powerful divine consciousness and soul allowed him to easily sense it. He could not help but look into the void. I recommend the new book, Ancient Sage Myriad Ancient King. Everyone is welcome to read it and save it. I need everyone's support. Only with everyone's support can the new book go further. Everyone, please collect the Eternal Holy King first. Well, look at it after you've fattened up. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 871, Bei Ming Shui in Danger, 1. He stopped and looked at the void with a serious expression. He wanted to find that person first, but there was nothing in the void, blue sky, and white clouds. Why did this mysterious existence help him hide his nervousness? This was something he could not understand. In such a dangerous place, it was normal to be nervous. There was no need for others to hide for him. What's wrong? Huangfu Yuyan asked when she saw Li Lingtian stop. She looked at him with her beautiful eyes. It's nothing. Li Lingtian shook his head as he replied indifferently. He then transmitted his voice to the other girls through secret voice sending and voiced out his thoughts. This feeling was like an inexplicable heavenly secret that no one could see through or ponder over. Following that, Li Lingtian circulated his ice soul martial soul to calm himself down and stop thinking about anything else. Things would come when they should. There was no way to hide. It was useless for him to waste his energy thinking about it now. In the depths of the void, a surprised voice sounded. This voice was simply inaudible. No one noticed it either. It was just like the sound of the wind. After waiting for billions of years, I've finally waited for someone who has perfected the 5 elements Tao intent. An ethereal voice sounded from the sky. It was like he was talking to himself, and no one heard it. Lingtian and his party flew quickly to the west where Dui Palace and Kuan Palace were located. However, it was not that easy to find these two palaces. In the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, the height and speed of flight were restricted, and the divine sense was also restricted. It was impossible to fly quickly, so they naturally could not use the flying ship to fly. He could only ride a flying sword. In this way, he could only fly 10,000 to 20,000 miles a day. They didn't dare to go out at night and could only find a safe place to rest. In this vast and boundless Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, it was simply boundless. It was simply difficult to ascend to the heavens to find a palace. Fortunately, Lingtian was infinitely close to becoming a divine array master, and his array Dao cultivation was extremely profound. As long as he could find the general direction, it would be easier to find the palace. During the day, Lingtian and the others flew straight to the west and found a safe place to rest at night. Along the way, they would collect the medicinal herbs they encountered. At the same time, they would encounter other experts, but they would all take a detour. Whoosh! In the sky, a peerless figure flew past. When this figure flew, his divine sense looked around carefully. It's been 5 days, and there's still no news from that bastard. You're not reliable at all. If I had known earlier, I would have entered the divine dragon ring. I wouldn't have to fly so carefully. If I were to encounter any danger, it'll teach you a lesson. The peerless figure looked a little tired and finally found a hidden place to land. She was dressed in snow-white clothes and had a peerless charm. Her face was covered with a veil, but this peerless charm was undoubtedly a peerless beauty. Bei Minxue was just like her name. Her clothes were snow-white and her skin was as white as jade. She was like a goddess from the 9 heavens. After following Lingtian into Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, they were randomly teleported. They waited for a long time but did not receive any information from Lingtian's token. In the end, they could only give up. However, the token was always in his hand, and he was looking forward to the news of the token appearing. During this period of time, Lingtian's strength had been imprinted in her mind. Although he was only a warrior sage powerhouse, his strength was terrifying. She was a mighty martial god powerhouse, yet she was relying on Lingtian's strength. Now that Lingtian was gone, she was afraid of this place. It was a girl's instinctive fear of unknown. After landing, she pouted her red lips and said fiercely, the fire spiritual chi here is so dense." Bei Minxue sensed the aura in the air, and her expression changed. She had an ice attribute and was naturally sensitive to fire. Now that she felt the aura of the fire attribute, she naturally discovered it immediately. Ice elemental martial artists had a natural resistance to fire elemental energy. Bei Mingxu's expression turned ugly when she saw this kind of fire elemental energy. Originally, he wanted to take a good rest, but he did not expect that there would be pure fire-type spiritual energy here. Naturally, he could not rest here. If it was somewhere else, even if there was fire-type spiritual energy, it would not affect him. Because the 5 elements spiritual energy in other places were balanced, it could not affect any martial artist at all. However, this place had a type of fire-type spiritual energy, and the fire-type spiritual energy was very dense. The will of the great path of fire, there's actually the will of the great path of fire. What a pity. It's a pity that I'm of the ice element. If I were of the fire element, my cultivation would definitely soar when I encounter this fire intent. Bei Mingxu's face revealed a hint of regret. However, she immediately thought of Lingtian. Lingtian possessed the 5 elements Tao will, which was suitable for him to cultivate. If he could obtain this Tao will, his cultivation would definitely soar. Forget it, let's leave first. Bei Minxue sighed and prepared to leave this place. However, just as he was about to leave, the expression on his face changed because of the sound of air being torn. When the voice sounded, a figure had already appeared in her line of sight. At the same time, the other party had also seen her. Hee, since you're already here, don't leave. There's no one here. It's really lonely. Stay and accompany me. A young man in green descended and blocked Bei Mingshu's path. A terrifying pressure enveloped the area within 100 meters. The peak of the second sky of the war god realm had a terrifying pressure pressing down on Bei Mingshu, making her unable to resist at all. Trash, get out of the way. You've already disrespected this queen. If you don't let go, you'll regret it. Bei Mingshu could feel the terrifying pressure, and her face behind the veil was filled with shock. In such a dangerous place, her identity was of no use at all. She could only depend on her own cultivation. In this place, the strong were respected. However, he was currently facing a powerhouse at the peak of the second level of the war god realm. He did not have the slightest bit of power to resist at all. A cold voice sounded. Even though he was restrained by the pressure, he displayed an unattainable temperament and a holy aura that kept people 1,000 miles away. Humph, Bei Mingshu, the proud daughter of the Bai Ming family of the Divine Continent. Where's Lin Zhirong? Where's that young man? You're alone now. Do you still want to use the Bai Ming family's identity to suppress me? When I catch you later, I will make you want to die. Hee hee. Zhao Tianyan's eyes scanned Bei Mingshu's body, and his divine senses searched the surroundings. However, he discovered that Bei Mingshu was the only person in this place, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. Looking at Bei Mingshu's peerless charm, he was instantly mesmerized. You're courting death. Bei Mingshu's expression behind the veil was slightly angry. The pressure from her entire body erupted, but her pressure at the first heaven of the war god realm was completely unable to resist the pressure from Zhao Tianyin at the second heaven of the war god realm. However, when this pressure appeared, he could temporarily move. He only needed an instant to move his divine sense. The jade hairpin on his head shot out. It turned into a sharp sword as if it wanted to pierce through the space. In the blink of an eye, the jade hairpin pierced through the pressure and hit Zhao Tianyin. Tisk. Pft. The sound of a body being pierced through rang out. The jade hairpin pierced through Zhao Tianyin's chest and flew out from his back. When it reappeared, it was already in Bei Mingshu's hand. Zhao Tianyin spat out a mouthful of blood. His body moved, and the pressure weakened a little. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Bei Mingshu twisted her body and disappeared. Dark North Divine Moon Art, Spiritual Moon Intent. Bei Mingshu floated in the air. Her entire being was pure and holy. She wore pure white clothes and made a mysterious gesture with her hands. Following that, her slender jade-like hands swiped downwards, causing the world to lose its color at this moment. A beam of moonlight appeared during the day. The moonlight ignored the space and shone down. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped Zhao Tianyin. Chi-chi, 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 rumble. Pft. The moonlight was like water, entering Zhao Tianyin's body like it was invincible. At the same time, the sky was cut by the moonlight, making a sizzling sound. Zhao Tianyin's expression changed drastically. He had never thought that Bei Mingshu would actually injure him under his pressure. She had taken advantage of his distraction to use such a terrifying move. His entire body was bombarded by the moonlight. The moonlight was everywhere, and there was no way to resist it. However, a peak second firmament martial god's cultivation base was ultimately not something a first firmament martial god could defeat. He spat out a mouthful of blood as a shocking power erupted. With his cultivation base, he no longer dared to let the moonlight attack him. Immediately, the moonlight in the sky was defeated by the terrifying power and disappeared. A trace of blood leaked out from the corner of Bei Mingshu's mouth, and her face was extremely pale. She had just used her secret treasure to injure Zhao Tianyin under the pressure and distracted him. She took the opportunity to escape and used the Bai Ming family's big move to injure Zhao Tianyin in one move. However, the difference in realm could not be made up for. While he injured Zhao Tianyin, he was also injured. She was extremely shocked. This second heaven of the war god realm strength was indeed terrifying. Her cultivation level was not as high as the second heaven, but she was extremely smart. When she saw that she was no match for Zhao Tianyin, her figure flashed and she was about to leave. However, just as he was about to leave, the space around him was suddenly sealed. He was caught off guard and fell down. "You want to leave? Bitch, how dare you hurt me? Today, I'll let you have a taste of lust and death. I'll torture you to death later." Zhao Tianyin's face was filled with rage. After being injured twice in a row, he could no longer hold it in. Seeing that Bei Minxue was about to escape, he naturally wouldn't let Bei Minxue have her way. The terrifying pressure sealed the space, causing Bei Minxue to fail in her escape. She looked at Bei Minxue coldly with an evil smile on her face. In his heart, he could already imagine Bei Minxue being teased by him and having fun in front of him. Chapter 872, The Miraculous Ice Flame, 1, Chi. Under the terrifying pressure, Bei Minxue had no chance to move at all. At first, Zhao Tianyin was unexpectedly injured by Bei Minxue's jade hairpin. Now that he was on guard, he naturally wouldn't give Bei Minxue another chance. Stretching out a hand, he quickly swung it at Bei Minxue. Several hand seals landed on Bei Minxue's body, and she was instantly trapped on the ground, unable to move at all. His eyes were filled with fear, and his expression changed drastically. Even if he wanted to commit suicide now, there was no chance. Phew. Zhao Tianyin arrived in front of Bei Minxue with an evil smile on his face. His eyes kept scanning Bei Minxue's exquisite body. He stretched out his hand and drew a line in front of Bei Minxue. The veil fell off, revealing a stunning face. At this moment, Zhao Tianyin was completely stunned. Bei Minxue was one of the 10 great fairies of the divine continent, but not many people had seen her true appearance. Now that they had seen Bei Minxue's peerless appearance, their minds were filled with shock. He did not expect such a beautiful girl to exist in this world. Her temperament and elegance were enough to make all the men in the world go crazy. The veil on Bei Minxue's face fell off. Being stared at like that by Zhao Tianyin, she felt humiliated. However, she couldn't even move her fingers. Hee. Iceberg Fairy Bei Minxue, one of the 10 fairies of the divine continent. I didn't expect to have such good fortune. Just be obedient. When the time comes, I'll give you a quick death. Zhao Tianyin looked at Bei Minxue's peerless beauty, and his heart thumped wildly. If Bei Minxue wasn't a member of the Biming family, he would definitely have to keep her here. However, Bei Minxue's identity wasn't simple, so he didn't dare to keep her. He could only kill him to prevent the Biming family from finding out. After he finished speaking, he reached out and stroked Bei Minxue's face. Bei Minxue could not move at all. She looked at Zhao Tianyin coldly, and 2 streams of crystal-clear tears rolled down her cheeks. If you dare to touch me, I won't let you off even if I turn into a ghost. Trash, why are you humiliating this prince? When he comes, he will burn your bones and scatter your ashes. At this moment, Bei Minxue was no longer the supreme martial god, nor was she the high and mighty saint emperor of the mystic Moon Empire, nor was she the genius daughter of the Biming family. She was now just an ordinary woman. Facing the humiliation, he was already extremely afraid. A girl's most important honor and purity were about to be insulted. Her heart was already trembling, and she wished she could die immediately. She thought of Lingtian. If he were here, he would not let her get hurt. However, she did not know where this person was now, nor did she know that she was in danger. As she thought about it, tears kept falling. Him? You mean that pretty boy? Ha, he's just a martial saint gigolo. Fortunately, he is not here. Otherwise, when Zhao Tianyin heard Bei Minxue mention him, his outstretched hand immediately stopped, and a disdainful expression appeared on his face. He immediately thought of the white-robed young man, a second sky of the martial saint realm expert. He was extremely arrogant because of Bei Minxue and Lin Zhirong. He even asked him to buy a token with 30 billion. Now that he didn't see the young man and Lin Zhirong, he was naturally emboldened. He even wanted to see the young man here. If he saw the young man, he would definitely burn his bones and scatter his ashes to get the spirit stones back. However, before he could finish speaking, a cold voice sounded in the air. This voice was extremely cold, almost freezing the entire space. How about this? What else can I do? His voice was bone-chilling. Zhao Tianyin shuddered and turned to look at the sky. When he saw the figure flying over from the sky, his expression changed. He became excited, shocked, and a trace of inexplicable fear. However, when Bei Minxue heard this voice, the tears on her face grew even more. Her entire body trembled as she looked at the white figure in the sky. She felt extremely wronged and finally found a way to vent her anger. A white-robed young man was flying over at a high speed. He seemed to be very slow, but with a single step, he arrived 100 meters away from Zhao Tianyin and stopped steadily in the air. He scrutinized Zhao Tianyin with a calm expression. However, the smile on his face was cold and sinister, and there was a cold killing intent in the air. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At this moment, another group of peerless figures flew over and arrived beside the white-robed young man. Lingtian. Zhao Tianyin called out to the white-robed young man in excitement. Indeed, it was Lingtian, Huang Fuyuyan, and the rest. After flying for 3 days, they finally found this place because there was pure fire-type spiritual energy here. He had also discovered the aura of a powerhouse here. Following the direction of the light, he did not expect to find a familiar aura. This familiar aura was extremely familiar to Lingtian. This was because he was familiar with Bei Minxue and Lin Zhirong. If it was Lin Zhirong, he wouldn't be worried. He would only be worried about the other powerhouses. However, if it was Bei Minxue, he would have to worry. Bei Minxue was a girl, and she was only at the first level of the martial god realm. If she were to meet an opponent, she would not be a match at all. It was really Bei Minxue, and she was in an extremely dangerous situation. If she had been a step late, Bei Minxue would have been humiliated. Lingtian's killing intent surged when he saw someone insulting Bei Minxue. He had already determined that the other party was about to fall. That's right, it's me. I want to hear it. If I were here, what would you do? Lingtian stared coldly at Zhao Tianyin. The peak second heaven martial god realm was indeed powerful. However, compared to the third firmament of the war god realm, the difference was still too great. The two were on completely different levels. He had even killed 2 or 3 third firmament war gods, so he would take a second firmament war god seriously. As soon as he finished speaking, a ball of icy flames appeared in his palm. The icy flames flickered in his palm, and a deathly aura erupted in the space. Everyone knew how terrifying the ice flame was. It was extremely powerful and magical. The fist-sized icy frost flame morphed into various shapes, just like the myriad objects in Lingtian's hands. Lingtian, you're just in time. I was just about to look for you. Let's see how you can be so arrogant in front of me without Lin Zhirong's help. Zhao Tianyin looked at Lingtian and glanced at the icy frost flame in Lingtian's hand. His heart trembled at the icy frost flame. Good. Since you dare to humiliate my family, then wait for my judgment. Lingtian's divine consciousness moved and the icy blaze in his palm quickly blasted toward Zhao Tianyin. Instantly, the space trembled in the face of the destructive aura of the icy blaze and the blaze. It was a shocking sight. In an instant, the icy flame arrived in front of Zhao Tianyin. Sensing the destructive aura, Zhao Tianyin's expression changed. Without any hesitation, he grabbed Bei Minxue behind him and charged toward the ice flames. Bei Minxue could only watch helplessly as she faced the cold ice flames. Her entire body had become Zhao Tianyin's shield. Zhao Tianyin took the opportunity to dodge as well. A destructive pressure was hurled at Lingtian. Qi, Sister Shui. Might of the heavens and earth. The ice flames landed on Bei Mingshu's body. Bei Mingxue and the other girls were stunned. They never expected such a situation to happen. Tang Zimeng and the others exclaimed. Their faces were pale as they were stunned by the scene in front of them. However, Li Lingtian did not react in the slightest. Instead, he unleashed his mighty pressure and sent it forward. The power of heaven and earth collided with Zhao Tianyan's pressure. Rumble. With a dull thud, Zhao Tianyin was tossed out. Li Lingtian's figure flashed forward and appeared before Bei Mingxue. With a swipe of his hand, the icy frost flame returned to Li Lingtian's palm before disappearing. Bimingsu was unharmed. Li Lingtian hugged Bimingsu as his body swayed once again and he arrived before Huangfu Yuyan and the others. Huangfu Yuyan and the others, as well as Zhao Tianyin, were all shocked by this action. Sister Shui, are you alright? Sister Shui, how are you? Instantly, all the girls opened their mouths to ask Bei Mingxue, waking her up from her shock. From the beginning to the end, she could not believe that Li Lingtian's frost flame had landed on her. With Li Lingtian's intelligence and strength, he would not attack at all because he knew that she would be used as a shield. However, Li Lingtian had to attack. Furthermore, it was the terrifying icy frost flame. The power of the icy frost flame was well known. Even a martial god would lose half his life if he did not die. Now that he had woken up, he quickly checked himself. He was not injured at all, and he was instantly shocked. I'm fine. What's going on? Bei Mingxue asked Li Lingtian when she saw the situation. The other girls and Zhao Tianyin were also looking at Li Lingtian, wondering what was going on. When they heard Li Lingtian's words, their expressions changed drastically. I've already mastered this icy frost flame to the point of perfection. Destruction and rebirth are all dependent on my will. I used the ice frost flame just to tease that trash. A faint smile appeared on Li Lingtian's face as he told her about the ice flame. He had complete control over the icy frost flame. The power of the icy frost flame depended on his will. Pfft. Damn it, this venerable self will definitely pull out your tendons and skin you today. Huangfu Yuyan and the others' expressions kept changing, but they were all extremely happy. However, Zhao Tianyan's anger was immediately triggered by Li Lingtian's words. He spat out a mouthful of blood and glared at Li Lingtian. He hated Li Lingtian to the bone. A second sky of the martial saint realm had actually ruined his plans and even humiliated him in front of so many beauties. If he did not skin Li Lingtian alive, he would not be able to vent his anger. Chapter 873, Li Lingtian is angry, 1. Then let's see how many chances you have to escape from me today. If you can't escape, I'll extract your soul and refine it today. Li Lingtian let go of Bei Mingxue and took a step forward. The aura around him surged. He stood proudly in the air like a god of war, and a terrifying pressure ruthlessly crushed towards the other party. He had just used the might of heaven and earth to crush his opponent's pressure, and he understood that the pressure of a second heaven war god was inferior to the might of heaven and earth. Since the second heaven war god had begun to use pressure to suppress him, he would now use pressure to suppress the second heaven war god as well. It was a tooth for a tooth. Bei Mingxue felt a wave of disappointment when she sensed Li Lingtian's release. However, it was time to finish off the opponent. Li Lingtian was the only one who could take care of this second heaven martial god and avenge her humiliation. She began to look forward to Li Lingtian's appearance in times of danger. As expected, Li Lingtian's godlike appearance brought her hope. Li Lingtian was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye when he looked at him. His thin back appeared extremely imposing at this moment, like an unshakable mountain, giving people a sense of security. Damn it. Zhao Tianyin was enraged when he heard Li Lingtian's words. A second firmament martial saint had actually put on such a stance. His arrogant tone was beyond his imagination. Without Lin Zhirong, he was still so arrogant. He was courting death. Moreover, she even used her pressure to retaliate against him. This slap made a loud sound. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying pressure had already erupted. Immediately, two terrifying pressures bombarded in the air. Rumble. Boom. Boom. Lingtian unleashed his heavenly demon domain, and the power of heaven and earth clashed fiercely with Zhao Tianyan's pressure. Today, I will let you know what it means to extract souls and refine them. The difference between the second heaven martial saint's pressure and the second heaven martial god's pressure was too great. Even if Lingtian's pressure was terrifying, he was still no match for Zhao Tianyin and could only fight to a draw. Seeing this situation, he did not hesitate. The terrifying true essence in his body instantly disappeared and his body retreated. However, when he retreated, a terrifying black demonic chi erupted from his entire body. His hair fluttered in the wind, and 3 exquisite lotus-shaped runes appeared between his eyebrows. The runes were scarlet red, and his entire person became demonic. Saint Demon Quintessence. Divine Magic Dragon Blade. Lingtian's demonic chi burst out from his body, and the monstrous demonic chi wreaked havoc in the space. He floated in the air like a demon god. In his hand was a long, pitch-black demon blade that emitted destructive demonic chi. Then, he waved his hand, and the Saint Magic Dragon blade in his hand was swung out. Instantly, a brilliant light flashed. Rumble. Pfft. With a loud explosion, the destructive demonic chi attack of the divine magic dragon blade struck Zhao Tianyan's body fiercely. Zhao Tianyin was thrown out and spat out a mouthful of blood. The terrifying holy demon chi corroded his meridians and blood essence, causing Zhao Tianyan's expression to change drastically. This situation was completely beyond Zhao Tianyan's imagination. He did not expect Lingtian to be a demonic cultivator, and the power of his demonic skill was terrifying. The power of the devil blade in his hand was even more terrifying, directly destroying his true essence and meridians. However, before he could react, Lingtian swung the divine magic dragon blade in his hand again. The light of the divine magic dragon blade swept across the sky. In the blink of an eye, dozens of destructive attacks bombarded Zhao Tianyin. Boom. Boom. Rumble. Destructive sounds erupted in the air. Zhao Tianyin kept dodging the attacks, but he had no chance to dodge at all. In an instant, he became like a sandbag, constantly being bombarded. There were traces of blood at the corner of his mouth, and his clothes were already tattered. He looked like a beggar. Saint Devil Chi, 9 Heavenly Devil Finger. At that moment, Lingtian seized the opportunity. The divine magic dragon blade in his hand floated in front of him, and with a flick of his finger, a destructive and eerie aura was released. Tisk. Pft. Ah. A crisp sound rang out as his body was pierced through. Zhao Tianyin spat out a mouthful of blood, followed by a miserable cry. His body fell rapidly, shaking continuously. Turn around. Lingtian shouted at Huangfu Yuyan and the others when he saw Zhao Tianyin injured. Because he didn't want Huangfu Yuyan and the others to see the next move. You must be prepared to pay the price for humiliating my family. Try my soul destruction technique. Huangfu Yuyan and the rest were stunned. Although they were confused, they obediently turned around and did not look at Lingtian. Sensing Huangfu Yuyan and the others turning around, Lingtian's face turned vicious and his lips curled into a cruel smile. With a flick of his divine consciousness, the Saint Demon's quintessential understanding was activated. Instantly, a shocking amount of demonic chi condensed rapidly and Lingtian disappeared into it. In the air, strange demonic chi fluctuations appeared. Then, the demonic chi turned into countless thin threads. The thin threads pierced through space and slammed into Zhao Tianyan's body. The injured Zhao Tianyin couldn't move at all. When he saw the countless thin threads enter his body, a hint of relief appeared on his face. This was because the young man in front of him was too terrifying. He was so terrifying that he could not accept it. He had never thought that he would one day fall at the hands of a martial saint. Now that he had fallen, everything was in the past. However, he never expected that the thin thread would not free him. Instead, it brought him endless pain, unimaginable pain. Ah, ah, ah. Ah, ah, for a moment, screams sounded in the air, and the screams resounded throughout the world. Huangfu Yuyan and the rest understood that Li Lingtian was truly enraged this time. Bei Mingxue felt a sweetness in her heart. Although Li Lingtian's methods were vicious, it was all because of her. Otherwise, with Li Lingtian's strength, he would not need to use such a demonic technique. The demonic technique was only meant to inflict pain on Zhao Tianyin. In the sky, as the last scream fell, the wind disappeared, and the demonic qi disappeared. The world fell silent as Li Lingtian retracted his devil skill. When he finally returned to Huangfu Yuyan and the others, Zhao Tianyin had already vanished completely. It's done. Li Lingtian looked at Bei Mingxue apologetically. This time, he had almost humiliated Bei Mingxue. If he had allowed Bei Mingxue to enter the divine dragon ring, this wouldn't have happened. His voice was extremely gentle and Bei Mingxue could feel Li Lingtian's guilt. You bad guy. Bimingsu's tears flowed down once again. Her slender hands clenched into fists as she continued to hit Li Lingtian. She could not blame Li Lingtian as she was a powerhouse. Furthermore, she had a slim chance of survival in a place like this. Moreover, her cultivation was higher than Li Lingtian's and Li Lingtian had even saved her. However, at this moment, she was venting her anger on Li Lingtian. She did not seem to hate him, but rather, she was acting coquettishly. He would only act like this in front of someone he could rely on. Huangfu Yuyan and the rest looked at Li Lingtian and Bimingsu. They knew how Bimingsu felt. If it were any other girl, they would feel worse than death when they were humiliated. Fortunately, they had arrived in time. Otherwise, Bei Mingxue would not have been spared. Li Lingtian's expression was calm, but he felt awkward being stared at by the other girls because there were a few of them who were his wives. However, he still reached out his hand and pulled Bei Mingxue into his embrace. His palm caressed Bei Mingxue's back. At the same time, his heart was trembling. Bei Mingxue was a peerless beauty, one of the 10 great fairies of the divine continent, the Ice Mountain Fairy. She was extremely cold and kept people 1,000 miles away. He was a high and mighty existence, and his entire body carried a holy aura. But now, he was in his arms. As a man, this was definitely a kind of pride and supreme happiness. As his heart trembled, he also felt Bei Mingxue's body tremble. Bei Mingxue's heart was trembling with nervousness. Gradually, she forgot everything that had just happened. The feeling of being held in his arms was intoxicating and exciting. After some time, Bei Mingxue stopped crying and Li Lingtian gently pushed her away. He reached out to wipe the tears off his face. This action was extremely familiar, but he soon realized that it was Bei Mingxue in front of him, not Huangfu Yuyan and the others. Instantly, he felt extremely awkward. Huangfu Yuyan and the others looked at Li Lingtian with a half-smile. Bei Mingxue felt a wave of disappointment when she was pushed away. This feeling was too unbearable. However, when he saw the expressions of Huangfu Yuyan and the others, he blushed and wished he could find a hole to hide in. Sister Shui, I'm sorry. I was too careless. Li Lingtian opened his mouth to break the silence and the strange and ambiguous atmosphere. His expression was serious. This time, he was truly enraged. If something really happened to Bei Mingxue, he would never forgive himself. Even if the entire world was destroyed, it would not be able to make up for the damage Bei Mingxue had suffered. Now, he understood that he had been too careless this time. If he had called Bei Mingxue into the divine dragon ring, this wouldn't have happened. Little brother Lingtian, I can't blame you. It's because I'm too weak. You still save me now. Bei Mingxue naturally understood the guilt in Li Lingtian's heart. There was no one else in the world who could make someone like Li Lingtian feel guilty. She was definitely the first person to make Li Lingtian apologize. The feeling just now was really intoxicating. This time, it was worth it. In the future, I definitely won't let anyone hit you with a finger. If anyone makes you angry, I will slaughter the entire divine martial continent. Lingtian's expression was extremely serious as his body exuded a faint aura. Although his voice was calm, his tone was frighteningly loud. However, the girls felt extremely blissful when they heard it. This was because Lingtian was a man of his word. The fact that he had said such words was enough to show how important they were to him. Following that, Biyao curiously asked Lingtian about what happened after he entered. Chapter 874, The Palace Under the Mountain. By the way, did you come here after you came in? Biyao asked Lingtian curiously after calming herself down. However, her face was still blushing when she looked at Lingtian. After all, she had just witnessed Lingtian getting angry because of her, and she had even cried in his arms. It was definitely a first for her to reject people thousands of miles away from an inexperienced girl. In the past, she had never even been close to a man, let alone like this. When others talked to her, they would look up to her. Now, she was crying in the arms of this young man. She felt shy, but she did not reject this feeling. After I came in, I knew I was in trouble. This Xiaoyao Immortal Palace is random. The people who are teleported in are all random. It's impossible for them to be together. However, I cast an array formation and waited for a day before leaving. I didn't expect to encounter a third firmament martial god expert as soon as I left. That third firmament martial god is indeed too terrifying. I also escaped and came to the Qian Palace. I obtained the will of the Great Path of Water, which wiped out that level 3 expert. Lingtian explained his entry into Xiaoyao's Celestial Palace at an unhurried pace. He also briefly explained the 9 temples. Biyao finally understood what was going on. It was sheer luck that she was saved by Lingtian earlier. It was fated. Otherwise, she would have been teleported to this place in such a huge Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. Moreover, everything was strange and coincidental. Such a coincidence was indeed a little too much. However, it was a good thing overall. After all, there were no problems and they came over safely. This place is to the north of Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. The north belongs to fire, and the earth fire is in the palace. Since the fire elemental spiritual energy appeared here, Dui Gong should be not far away. Let's search here first and try to find Dui Gong as soon as possible. Lingtian finally explained the situation of the place. He then recalled that Zhao Tianyin must have come here for Dui Gong. Since an expert like Zhao Tianyin had come here, he believed that other experts would also come here. Therefore, they had to find the Dui Palace before the other experts arrived and enter it. Alright. Ying and you are the only ones with the fire element. We only have the ice element, but we can work together to sense the source of the fire element spiritual energy and find Dui Gong. Huangfu Yuyan waited for Lingtian to finish speaking. She knew that this matter could not be delayed in case other powerhouses arrived. Hence, she voiced her thoughts. Fire-type powerhouses were naturally the easiest to sense. However, ice-type and water-type powerhouses were naturally sensitive to fire-type powerhouses, so they could naturally sense the existence of fire-type powerhouses with ease. Moreover, this place was the Dui Palace, which was filled with earth fire. The will of the fire path and fire spiritual energy were dense, so it was not difficult to sense them. Following that, the group of more than 10 people began to sense the fire attribute spirit qi while Lingtian and Xianyuan Ying remained suspended in the air. The two of them held each other's hands. The 5 elements sacred body was activated, and the 5 elements will of the way started to circulate. Instantly, everything between heaven and earth was under the control of the sea of consciousness. The 5 elements heaven and earth, his entire person had fused with this heaven and earth. Gradually, the spiritual energy and everything in the world entered their consciousness. After an unknown period of time, the two of them opened their eyes at the same time. They looked at each other and smiled. With this kind of 5 elements sacred body, the two of them had already reached a level where their hearts and minds were connected. They had even more perception than if they were one. They could know each other's thoughts. Let's go. Li Lingtian's voice reached Tang Qingyue and the rest's ears before they flew away quickly with Xianyuan Yingying. Tang Qingyue and the others saw Li Lingtian and his companion's situation and understood that they had located Dui Gong. Then, the group of people flew quickly, tearing through space and quickly flying into the distance. However, they did not fly far. They covered the distance of 20 miles in a moment. Li Lingtian and Xianyuan Yingying stopped in front of a mountain peak. The mountain peak was not big, but it was extremely tall. The entire mountain peak was emitting hot air. Even the rocks were fiery red, and the blood-red color was extremely dazzling. Everyone arrived in front of the mountain peak, their faces revealing shock. This is the Dui Palace? Tang Zimen looked at the mountain peak with a curious expression. No matter how she looked at it, this mountain peak had nothing to do with a palace. She was not the only one who was curious. The other girls were also staring at Li Lingtian with their beautiful eyes. Wait a moment. I'll set up some formations here before we talk. Li Lingtian was not surprised as he looked at the mountain peak. It did not matter whether it was a palace or not as long as the firewall was here. However, the prerequisite was that he had to set up some formations in this place to hide the tracks of Huangfu Yuyan and the others. The main thing was to use formations to hide the existence of this mountain peak. In case any heaven-defying changes happened, and he felt a sense of danger. Because he had the will of the 5 elements, he could only exert the greatest power after the will of the 5 elements was balanced. Previously, he had obtained half of the will of water from the Qian Palace. If he only obtained the ordinary will of fire now, it would affect his cultivation of the 9 heavens. Although he was a little worried, he couldn't hesitate anymore. His divine sense moved, and a light flashed between his eyebrows. The divine array diagram appeared in front of him. Then, he flicked his 10 fingers and cast a series of incantation gestures. The incantation gestures landed on the divine array diagram, and it immediately began to tremble. Swoosh, swoosh. Swoosh, swoosh. Light screens appeared in the sky. When the light screens descended, this part of the world had already been hidden. Without a powerful array master, it was impossible to discover the situation here. After an hour, Li Lingtian's clothes were drenched and he looked exhausted. However, the array formation in this place had been completely activated, and the mountain peak had disappeared. After doing everything, he felt a little relieved. He rested for 2 hours and waited for his spiritual energy to recover. His body flashed as he chanted incantations. Sacrifice. He pointed his 10 fingers at the mountain peak inside the array. Immediately, the formation trembled, and the mountain peak trembled in front of this spell. Boom! With a shocking explosion, the mountain peak was strangely split into 2 halves. However, this mountain peak was not split open, but some kind of mechanism was triggered, and the mountain peak was split into 2 from the middle. In the mountain peak, a shocking fire-type spiritual energy soared into the sky, and the will of the great path of fire appeared. Purple-white flames flickered on the mountain peak, emitting an aura that could burn the world. At that moment, Li Lingtian's body flashed and he flew toward the sea of flames on the mountain peak. At the same time, Li Lingtian's body was engulfed in flames. The flaming sacred body had already been activated. With the flaming sacred body, he naturally did not fear the flames and was naturally fused with them. Chi-chi, chi-chi, he disappeared into the sea of fire, and sizzling sounds could be heard. Li Lingtian's figure entered the sea of fire and felt the burning power of the sea of fire. However, as a flaming sacred body, he was not afraid of such power but felt a sense of familiarity instead. This was the power of the flaming sacred body. It had a natural affinity with the will of fire. He had the will of the 5 elements, so he was very close to the will and attributes of the 5 elements between heaven and earth. However, he liked the fire element the most because he had the flaming sacred body. There was no conflict between the flaming sacred body and the five elements sacred body. On the contrary, the flaming sacred body would only become more magical. Swoosh! He quickly flew down. The sea of fire below the mountain was like a bottomless abyss. The lower he went, the stronger the flames became. He didn't know how far he had flown. He could only feel the pressure below getting stronger and stronger, and the flames getting more and more terrifying. Finally, he landed on the ground. The ground was covered in fiery red flames, but his flaming sacred body naturally had no fear. Below him was a vast sea of fire. Through his familiarity with the sea of fire, he could see through the sea of fire at a glance. There was a palace in the sea of fire. The palace was no different from the Qian Palace and the Qin Palace, but the attributes were different. The palace was filled with flames. All kinds of flames formed this palace. The will of the fire. As expected, it's here. This is Dui Palace. Lingtian walked forward step by step. His body passed through the sea of fire, completely ignoring the raging flames. He looked at the words Dui Gong on the palace and felt the rich will of the great path of fire. The will of the great path of fire now was on a completely different level compared to the will of the great path of fire he had obtained in the Tianhe zone. Boom! When he arrived in front of the palace, a stream of earth fire surged toward him. Lingtian's eyes were calm and he was completely fearless of the incoming earth fire. Any destructive flame attack or Phoenix's nirvana required the baptism of flames. He had the flaming sacred body, so he was naturally not worried about these flames. The raging flames continued to temper his body, but Lingtian did not show any pain on his face. Instead, he seemed to be enjoying it. No matter how powerful this flame was, it would not be more terrifying than the Nine Suns' sacred flame. He was refined by terrifying existences like the Nine Suns' sacred flame and the ice flame. His entire person had the flaming sacred body, which was also the heart of the flaming flame. If he was afraid of the flame, it would be a joke. Crash! The door of the palace opened at this moment, and a destructive will of the great path pressed over. Lingtian could no longer relax when the destructive will of the great path arrived. The flaming sacred body was only his physique and he was not afraid of the flames. However, the will of the great path was an ethereal consciousness. If he couldn't bear it, he would be destroyed by this consciousness. It was just like how humans were born to eat rice. If they ate too much, they would die from bloating. Water could carry a boat, but it could also capsize it. This was the principle. Those who played with fire were burned to death, and those who knew how to swim were drowned to death. These were all common occurrences. Lingtian's expression was solemn as the destructive fire will of the great path bombarded him. He held himself together and endured the baptism of the will. He walked towards the palace door step by step. Gradually, he crossed the palace door and entered the blazing palace made of flames. When he arrived at the palace, the will of the fire was even more terrifying. The extent of its terror had already exceeded Lingtian's imagination. Chapter 875. The arrival of a strong enemy. Lingtian's expression turned grave when he sensed the terrifying fire will of the way. He looked at the sky above the palace. A golden page was floating in the air, emitting a faint golden light. Lingtian was not concerned about the golden light but the mysterious characters on it. When he saw the golden page, his face revealed an excited expression. His guess was right. This golden page was a fragment of the will of the great path of fire. The Qian Palace was a part of the will of the great path of water, while the Qin Palace was another part of the will of the great path. The two wills of the great path of water could be combined to perfection. This was the Dui Palace now. Earth fire, but there should only be half of it. When he found the will of the great path of fire in the Earth Palace, he would be able to complete it. Boom! At this moment, the golden page emitted a destructive will of the great path of fire. The will of the great path of fire entered his sea of consciousness. Immediately, Lingtian's face revealed a pained expression. However, his eyes were filled with determination and a hint of excitement. Gradually, he closed his eyes. He had the flaming sacred body, so he was more familiar with the will of fire. For a moment, he entered a state of selflessness. Flaming sacred body, will of fire. Not good, the will of the Tao of water has loosened. Lingtian's expression gradually relaxed as he comprehended the fire will of the way. However, in just a moment, extreme joy turned into sorrow. The will of the Tao of water in his body loosened at this moment. He knew how terrifying this situation was. The expression on his face also changed. He had never expected such a thing to happen. Ice and fire combination. Heaven and earth reincarnation art. With such a thing happening, he didn't dare to hesitate anymore. He quickly used the ice and fire fusion, balancing the two attributes. However, the two cultivation techniques were unable to suppress this water will at all. Instead, it became even more terrifying. Lingtian opened his eyes and his expression was one of shock. He kept thinking of ways to balance the two attributes, but it was not what he had imagined. Since you're a genius, then you should go against the heavens. I've arranged so many benefits for you. Don't tell me you can't even endure this bit of hardship. You might as well just destroy it. I hope you can get through this. Either you die or you're reborn. In the depths of the void, that ethereal voice appeared again, but no one heard it either. The voice was filled with anticipation. If Lingtian knew about the voice's existence, he would understand that it was being manipulated. However, at this moment, he was already on the verge of death. At his cultivation realm, death meant that he would vanish into thin air. The will of the great path of water, the terrifying will of the great path of water continued to wreak havoc. It was as gentle as water, but at this moment, it became extremely terrifying. At the same time, the will of the great path of fire continued to wreak havoc, and his entire person became the center of destruction. No matter what cultivation technique it was useless. He had never thought that the destructive fusion of ice and fire would cause a backlash on his body. The will of the great path was ethereal. When encountering such a thing, it was not only physical pain, but also the pain of consciousness. His entire body was suffering from the pain of destruction. His body kept twisting as if he was about to be destroyed at any moment. Not good, big brother Lingtian is in danger. At this moment, Xianyuan Yingying, who was waiting outside, said with a worried expression. At the same time, Huangfu Yuyan and the rest sensed that Lingtian was in danger. Naturally, they could connect with Lingtian through dual cultivation. Now that Lingtian was in trouble, they could sense it even if they were thousands of miles away. What problem did little brother Lingtian encounter? Big brother, what problem did you encounter? How is young master? At that moment, Ji, Yin Yao Yao, and the others asked in unison. They were not aware of Lingtian's condition and were anxious to ask Xianyuan Yingying. All of a sudden, the group of girls became extremely anxious. In their hearts, Lingtian was their pillar of support. Without him, they would not know what to do. Big brother Lingtian's Tao intent of water and Tao intent of fire have backfired. Xianyuan Yingying's face was filled with confusion. Lingtian had the 5 elements sacred body and the flaming sacred body. He had the 5 elements Tao will and the attributes of the 5 elements could not harm him. But now, such a thing had happened. It was indeed confusing. All of this was simply impossible. It was completely beyond their imagination. Don't worry. He will have a way. Even if we are anxious, we can't help him. Our main problem now is to restrain the people outside. Huangfu Yuyan consoled the other girls as she looked into the sky. A red-robed elder flew over from the void. His clothes were fiery red, and even his hair was fiery red. Before it reached the array, the air seemed to be destroyed by the terrifying power of flames. A fire elemental expert, 3rd firmament war god. After Huangfu Yuyan spoke, the other girls also saw the experts flying over from outside the array. All of them revealed shocked expressions. Although the experts outside were temporarily unable to discover their existence, the array formation would not be able to hold on for long in front of a third firmament war god. If the array was broken, they would have to face this third firmament martial god expert. Yes, big sister Yu Yan, you guys use the 5 elements reincarnation. I'll use the 5 elements Dao intent to support you, and big sister Shui will stall for time for big brother Lingtian. Xianyuan Yingying looked at the experts outside and said seriously. Now that Li Lingtian had gone down, it was a crucial moment and they could not allow Li Lingtian to be disturbed. They had to work together to stop the third firmament martial god powerhouse outside and buy as much time as they could for Li Lingtian. All right. All the girls nodded and took out their treasures. When the array was broken, they would attack together. Outside, Shiman Wushuang landed with a surprised look in his eyes. I didn't expect someone to arrive earlier. It's useful to use an array formation in front of others, but in front of me, don't even think about hiding it from me. However, this array formation is quite powerful. It should be a holy array master. Let's see if your array formation is more powerful or my flame golden body. Shiman Wushuang looked at the empty space. However, with his cultivation at the third heaven of the martial god realm and an array master, his array Dao cultivation was not profound enough. But even so, he could still tell at a glance that there was something strange here. It was obvious that someone had cast an array formation. Blazing golden body. Heaven and earth incineration. A look of disdain appeared on Shiman Wushuang's face. The true essence in his entire body soared. Suddenly, the pressure of the third sky of the martial god realm soared into the sky. The world trembled continuously in front of the third sky of the martial god realm. At the same time, Shiman Wushuang's entire body turned into a blazing golden body. It was as if the world was about to be destroyed and burned by this blazing golden body. Then, Shiman Wushuang's huge flaming fist smashed fiercely towards the array. Boom! Tisk! Rumble! Chi-chi, chi-chi in the sky, the air was constantly burning. The destructive fiery fists bombarded the array formation fiercely, and the array formation began to tremble. The formation trembled, and the air was filled with raging flames. The entire world had turned into a sea of fire. Huangfu Yuyan and the others looked at Shiman Wushuang's strength and their hearts trembled. Their expressions were extremely solemn. The outside couldn't see the situation inside, but the inside could see everything outside. Rumble. Chi-chi, chi-chi, the array formation trembled continuously. Shiman Wushuang's attacks at the third heaven of the martial god realm continued to tear the array formation apart. This formation was merely a hidden illusory formation cast by Li Lingtian. Its power was not heaven-defying. But he hadn't expected to be discovered by a third firmament war god. Moreover, this third firmament war god knew a little about array formations. This was luck. What else could he say when he encountered such a thing? Prepare to attack. Tang Qingyue said as she looked at the situation outside. This was because the formation was about to be destroyed. He had to use the 5 elements reincarnation when the formation was destroyed. This way, he could give the other party a destructive blow and catch them off guard. They were both martial emperor powerhouses. Naturally, they would not believe that the other party would have anything good to say. If they met in this place, it would be a matter of life and death. After saying that, he circulated all the true essence in his body. The other girls also circulated their vital essence and unleashed the 5 elements reincarnation. Bei Minxue, Yin Yaoyao, Ge, and the others were all prepared. As soon as the other party broke through the array formation, they would unleash their strongest attack. Well, attack first, the 5 elements reincarnation will be second, and Ge's mysterious sky divine arrow will be last. Bei Minxue looked at the strength of her group and began to make arrangements. As a martial god expert, she was extremely experienced in battles. The power of the mysterious sky divine arrow could destroy the heavens and earth. She could not let her opponent discover it. She had to wait until the other party was not paying attention or could not be distracted to use it. All right, get ready. The group of girls nodded and used their trump cards. Their beautiful eyes were all looking at the array seriously. Rumble. The array kept trembling, and Shimin Wushuang's face was filled with excitement. Based on his understanding of arrays, he knew that the will of the fire was here. Coupled with this array, the will of the fire was undoubtedly here. Void sacred flame, break. Seeing that the array had reached the end of its attack, Shimin Wushuang circulated his true essence and a destructive flame bombarded the array. Rumble. With a shocking explosion, the array finally began to crack. With a tearing sound, the array formation cracked and then completely shattered. However, at this moment, several devastating attacks blasted out. The overwhelming attacks landed on Shimin Wushuang like meteors. 5 Elements Reincarnation. Dark North Divine Moon Mantra. Moonlight Intent. True Dragon Chi. Instantly, the destructive attack smashed down fiercely. Shimin Wushuang's expression changed drastically. He never thought that there would be so many experts in the array. Looking at so many attacks, his heart trembled. In this situation, there were at least a dozen experts. The experts who came in were all martial god experts. Even he did not dare to withstand the attacks of so many martial god experts. His heart trembled as he was shocked by the situation in front of him. Chapter 876, Terrifying Pressure, 1, Blazing Golden Hoop. Fire Shadow Avatar. Shimin Wushuang's heart trembled when he saw the destructive attack coming. With so many experts attacking, even if a third firmament martial god was conceded, he did not have any confidence at all. He immediately felt extremely wronged. He had worked hard to break this array formation, but he had been attacked by so many experts at the same time. He was extremely unwilling. He did not think too much and displayed a terrifying defense. Rumble. Rumble. Suddenly, a series of explosions sounded in the air, and more than 10 attacks landed on Shimin Wushuang's defense. However, what puzzled Shimin Wushuang was that even a third sky martial god realm expert would be destroyed by these attacks. However, these attacks did not even break through his defense. He only felt waves of trembling. This feeling was like a furball. Suddenly, he saw a dozen peerless girls in his eyes. All of these girls were unparalleled existences. Moreover, these girls were all martial emperors and martial saints. Only one of them was at the first level of the martial god realm. He immediately understood that the people who attacked him were all martial emperors and martial saints. Naturally, they would not affect his defense. When he discovered this problem, he was furious. However, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Although several of the attacks did not take his life, they were extremely terrifying. Rumble. Boom. Boom. Kacha, kacha. The 5 Elements Reincarnation and Bei Ming's attacks had already landed on Shimin Wushuang's defense. Shimin Wushuang's entire body started to tremble. Originally, Shimin Wushuang was shocked by the attack in the air. He thought that it was an attack from the martial god and his entire body was temporarily defending. It was already too late when he realized that it was a martial monarch realm expert's attack. The 2 destructive attacks kept tearing apart his defense. Rip. With a crisp sound, the powerful defense was torn apart, and his body was thrown out. Although his defenses had been broken, these attacks had no effect on him, who was at the 3rd level of the war god realm. However, just as Shimin Wushuang was feeling relaxed, a sense of death appeared in his sea of consciousness. Only a martial god expert with many years of experience and senses would be able to sense this kind of danger. There was no evidence at all. However, this kind of sensing was often the most useful. When he discovered this, Shimin Wushuang's heart trembled. Mysterious Sky Divine Arrow. A crisp and sweet voice rang out. The voice was as sweet as the sound of nature. However, this voice was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper in Shimin Wushuang's ears. A spiritual energy passageway formed in the space, and spiritual energy condensed from heaven and earth. At this moment, the spiritual chi between heaven and earth formed a strange passage. There was an arrow in the passage, and the arrow cut through the air as if it ignored space. When he saw the arrow, it was already in front of Shimen Wushuang. In front of this sharp arrow, even he, who was at the third stratum of the war god realm, was defenseless. In the space, the spiritual energy channel still existed, but the arrow had already passed through Shimen Wushuang's body in horror. Pfft! He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. When Shimen Wushuang fell, Ge had an exquisite arrow in his hand. He looked like a fairy. With an angelic face, a pure temperament, and a peerlessly beautiful charm, coupled with the natural spiritual energy that she was born with, Ge was definitely a unique little beauty in the world at this moment. At this moment, Ge held an exquisite divine bow and a sharp arrow in his hand. He looked like a divine arrow goddess from the 9 heavens. Her entire body exuded a pure and beautiful aura, and she looked extremely cute. However, after she withdrew her bow and arrow, this aura disappeared and she completely became a weak woman. Huangfu Yuyan and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Shimen Wushuang being struck by the mysterious sky divine arrow. However, none of them relaxed in the slightest. After all, the third heaven of the war god realm was the third heaven. Their strength was extremely terrifying, and some of their methods were incomparably strange. Pfft! As expected, under the attack of the mysterious sky divine arrow, he still stood up in the end. He spat out a mouthful of blood and looked coldly at his chest. His chest had been pierced by an arrow. His gaze slowly shifted to Huangfu Yuyan and the others. Good, good, very good. You are the first to be able to injure me. Hee, since we've met, you all belong to me. If you serve me well, you can all live. I didn't expect there to be a few virgins. This is the best. After I absorb your primordial yin, my cultivation will improve greatly. Shimen Wushuang looked at Huangfu Yuyan and the others in shock. There were so many peerless beauties here. Each of these girls was a peerless beauty that was hard to come by in the divine martial continent. He didn't expect to meet such a person here. He simply couldn't believe it. However, when he thought about how he had been injured, if he didn't conquer these girls, it would be difficult to dispel the hatred in his heart. He looked at Huangfu Yuyan and the others with an evil look in his eyes, and finally, his gaze landed on Ge. Seeing that there were still a few virgins here, he became even more excited. You're not dead yet? Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. If my big brother Lingtian finds out that you insulted us, he'll definitely grind your bones into ashes. Tang Qingyue and the others were shocked and they saw that Shimen Wushuang was still alive. They felt a slight tremble in their hearts. They were at the third firmament of the war god realm. Even if they joined forces, they wouldn't be a match for them. If it were anyone else, they would definitely have died. However, I am a dual-hearted person and have a self-healing body, hee. Shimen Wushuang felt proud when he heard Tang Qingyue and the others' questions. Staring at the dozen girls, he walked over step by step. Do it. Huangfu Yuyan shouted. As soon as she finished speaking, she used the 5 elements reincarnation. Even the mysterious sky divine arrow could not kill her. One could imagine her strength. If she did not take action now, she would only become a prisoner later. Rumble. Rumble. Instantly, an earth-shattering attack blasted out. The force in the sky raged, and the ground trembled. However, the attacks of martial emperors and martial saints could not pose a threat to the third sky of the martial god realm at all. Only the 5 elements reincarnation and Bei Mingsu's northern dark divine moon art could deal a blow to Shimen Wushuang. Otherwise, Shimen Wushuang would not have been able to ignore these attacks. Xianyuan Yingying's 5 elements Dao intent was unleashed. The destructive attack combined with the 5 elements reincarnation attacked Shimen Wushuang continuously. Shimen Wushuang's defense was unleashed and a series of fiery fists came crashing down. All of a sudden, the dozen girls were forced to retreat step by step, looking extremely miserable. Shimin Wushuang looked at the girls in front of him and his face was filled with excitement. It was as if he was watching these girls enjoying themselves under his body. Boom! At this moment, his expression changed drastically. He could feel the destructive aura of death in his heart. This feeling came from the bottom of his heart. The inexplicable feeling puzzled him, but just as he was puzzled, a destructive explosion erupted between heaven and earth. Not far behind Huangfu Yuyan and the others, a shocking destructive force appeared. This destructive power soared into the sky. The terrifying aura caused Shimin Wushuang's expression to change drastically. His body even trembled a little. It was fear that came from his heart. Instantly, everyone stopped. Bei Minxue and the others were also shocked, but they also felt some anticipation. At least Shimin Wushuang was no longer attacking, giving them a chance to rest. Boom! Another earth-shattering explosion sounded. Everyone looked at it in horror. Shimin Wushuang's expression was extremely ugly because he knew that someone had already obtained the will of fire. He was a step too late, and the thought of this made him angry. However, this destructive aura made him not dare to move at all. He had never seen such an aura before, but it gave people the feeling that it could kill him in an instant. In front of this aura, his entire person became incomparably small, like an ant in front of Shenwei. At the same time, Bei Minxue and the others also felt their bodies tremble, and their expressions changed drastically. He looked at the flames in the middle of the mountain in horror. The flames slowly emitted a supreme aura. Beneath the raging flames, Lingtian was in a terrible state in the palace. Blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth, and his face was pale. He was completely tortured by the extreme collision of the fire and water wills. His eyes revealed a trace of despair. Despair was mixed with unwillingness, but so what? All kinds of methods were used, and all kinds of cultivation techniques were used, but they still could not suppress the will of the great path of water and the will of the great path of fire. Moreover, the characters and will of the great path in the golden pages in the air kept entering his sea of consciousness, adding insult to injury. At that moment, Li Lingtian's upper dantian moved slightly. This slight movement caught Li Lingtian's attention. He was immediately surprised because there were two godheads in the middle of his upper dantian's brows, the ice godhead and the fire godhead. At the thought of these two godheads, Li Lingtian no longer had any qualms. He activated his divine consciousness and activated the two godheads. The godheads that had not shown any signs of movement were now being triggered by his divine consciousness. The divine spark was touched by the divine sense, triggering the divine spark and activating it at the same time. Instantly, a shocking divine might of destruction emanated from the godhead. Li Lingtian's heart trembled when he sensed the divine might of destruction. This divine aura was similar to the divine aura he had encountered when he met the remains of Ji-Yi's father at the bottom of the sea. This divine aura carried supreme divine aura. This godhead could only be condensed by a true god powerhouse. It was also the source of the cultivation of powerhouses above the true god level. The godhead was also the source of power for experts above the true god realm, just like the inner core of demon beasts or the golden elixir of warriors. The true divine might erupted at this moment, and the Dawn's palace began to tremble. The will of the great path of fire in the golden page also entered the fire divine persona, and the other will of the great path of fire also entered the fire divine persona. As the water Tao intent entered the ice-type godhead, Li Lingtian felt as if he had been freed. However, although the will of the great path of fire and the will of the great path of water were absorbed by the two divine personas, he became the bridge between the divine personas and the will of the great path. Chapter 877, Breakthrough, 1. Li Lingtian's face was filled with horror as he watched the terrifying divine might absorb the will. At the same time, he smiled bitterly in his heart. He had never expected such a situation to occur. This was something he had never expected. Boom! Boom! The shocking divine might continuously attack the flames, and a terrifying pressure soared into the sky. This divine might was something that Shimen Wushuang and the others were afraid of. The most powerful person in the divine martial continent was the martial god. The martial god had some knowledge of the secrets of the divine might, but he didn't know how terrifying it was. Now, seeing this true divine might, Shimen Wushuang was shocked. It was impossible for divine might to exist in the divine martial continent, but it had appeared in this place. In front of Shenwei, he, a third firmament war god, didn't even dare to move a finger. He didn't have the slightest bit of will to resist. At this moment, he didn't dare to escape. He could only wait for this divine might to disappear before making any plans. Besides, he definitely had to take the girls in front of him away. He didn't want to waste them. Swoosh. Another air-piercing sound rang out. When the air-piercing sound fell, a young man had already landed. However, when he saw the pressure in the air and felt the terrifying divine might, the young man did not hesitate at all and turned around to escape. However, he saw a familiar figure from the corner of his eye and quickly stopped. Bei Ming Shui. Lin Zhirong. This young man was Lin Zhirong. When he sensed the divine might, he did not hesitate to escape in case he was too late. However, when he saw Bei Minshui in front of him, he shouted loudly. At the same time, Bei Minshui saw Lin Zhirong and shouted at the same time. Lin Zhirong didn't hesitate at all. His body flashed and he endured the terrifying divine might as he arrived in front of Bei Minshui and the others. His divine sense locked onto Shimen Wushuang. He was a smart person, and it seemed like he had a grudge against Bei Mingshui and the others. I didn't expect to meet you here. That's great. Bei Mingshui was happy. With Lin Zhirong around, she wouldn't have to worry about Shimen Wushuang anymore. Why are you here? Who are they? Lin Zhirong looked at Bei Mingshui and was even more certain that there was a grudge between Bei Mingshui and Shimen Wushuang. Looking at Huangfu Yuyan and the others, his face was filled with shock. Bei Mingshui was already beautiful enough, but he didn't expect that there would be so many of them who weren't inferior to her. In fact, there were even 3 who were even more beautiful than her. With so many peerless beauties gathered together, no matter where they were, it would be a scene that would make the world lose its color. She's my younger sister. They're Sir Lingtian's wife and relatives. Sir Lingtian is down there now. Just keep an eye on this fellow. Bei Minshui said. Since Li Lingtian was unable to split up, it was best to have Lin Zhirong, a third firmament martial god, to hold the fort. I see. Don't worry, fairies. Leave this guy to me. Lin Zhirong was shocked. He did not expect these to be Li Lingtian's wives or relatives. The people around Li Lingtian were all peerless beauties. Comparisons were truly infuriating. However, only these peerless beauties were worthy of a monster like Li Lingtian. Tang Qingyue and the rest were in the cave when Li Lingtian was resting. Naturally, he had not seen them. He did not expect Li Lingtian to have so many peerless beauties by his side. After he finished speaking, his figure flashed and his divine sense locked onto Shimen Wushuang, but he didn't dare to make a move. In the face of such terrifying divine might, if anyone made a move, they might attract the bombardment of divine might. Li Lingtian's expression turned ugly as he was connected to the Godhead. When he had obtained the divine spark in the past, he hadn't planned to refine it because his cultivation wasn't high enough. However, in the end, he had nothing better to do, so he refined the divine spark. However, he could only temporarily stay in his upper dantian. Now, this divine persona began to change. The divine persona began to connect with the divine sense. At this moment, the fire and water wills were completely resolved. Although the 2 wills were solved, the problem of the Godhead came. He was only a second sky of the martial saint realm expert, but the Godhead could only be possessed by experts above the true God realm. He naturally didn't dare to think about fusing it now. If this was a fusion, he would definitely vanish into thin air. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. He had just left the wolf pack and was like a tiger's mouth. What kind of luck was this? The initial will of the Great Path had almost destroyed him. The will of the Great Path had been resolved, but the problem of the divine persona had appeared again. Swoosh! The two godheads entered his glabella. Instantly, the power of the godheads quickly spread throughout his entire body. At that moment, the power of the ice-type and fire-type divinity was circulating in his body. Lingtian was on the verge of going berserk. Rumble. Rumble. The destructive power of the ice and fire godheads destroyed the raging flames. The shocking divine might soared into the sky once again. Lingtian could not help but be fused with the divinity. He was like a bystander. His divine sense, divine spark, true essence, cultivation, aura, everything was changing. His entire body also sublimated, and his body carried a mysterious aura. Ah! 9 heavens of ice and fire, 5th heaven barren. After an unknown period of time, the two godheads had completely fused with Lingtian. A mysterious aura emanated from Lingtian's body. This aura was no different from the divine might of a divine spark. With the fusion of the Godhead, his entire body expanded slightly. He broke through the second sky of the martial saint realm to the third sky of the martial saint realm, and then broke through again to the fourth sky of the martial saint realm. As his cultivation increased, the will of the great path of water and the will of the great path of fire in his body also mutated. Ice and fire combined and sublimated. At this moment, the 9 heavens of ice and fire actually broke through without any conditions and reached the 5th heaven in one go. Boom! A destructive aura soared into the sky. A pillar of light broke through the mountain peak and directly bombarded the 9 heavens. The 5th level of the 9 levels of ice and fire barren. The aura of destruction and desolation appeared as a pillar of light shot into the sky. Lingtian followed the pillar of light and soared into the sky. The terrifying aura carried traces of divine might as he floated in the air. Now, they had already arrived at a place 1,000 meters high. At a height of 1,000 meters, there was already the existence of divine might and heavenly might. However, now that Lingtian's body had fused with the Godhead, he possessed a portion of the divine might. Naturally, he was not afraid of the divine might. His gaze swept down. Looking at the situation of Huangfu Yuyan and the others, he immediately understood what was going on. Without any hesitation, a cold light flashed in his eyes. His figure flashed and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Shimen Wushuang. A shocking divine might spread out from his body. This divine might was even more terrifying than the might of heaven and earth. Although it was only a wisp of divine might, it was enough. In front of Shenwei, Shimen Wushuang was completely stunned. He didn't expect this young man to have Shenwei. Caught off guard, Lingtian extended his hand and a ball of light appeared in his palm. One side of the light was blazing flames, and the other side was ice. The destructive ball of light carried a destructive aura as it bombarded Shimen Wushuang's body. Boom! With a loud explosion, the ball of light struck Shimen Wushuang. This ray of light was like the judgment of a real god. It hit Shimen Wushuang without any suspense. Ah! With a scream that resounded through the world, Shimen Wushuang's powerful body turned into dust like a dead tree. The third firmament of the war god realm was reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye by this attack, disappearing from the world. Shimen Wushuang, third heaven, had fallen. Lin Zhirong and Bei Minxue were both stunned by this scene. They couldn't believe what was happening in front of them. This was a third firmament martial god, yet he was reduced to ashes by Lingtian's casual attack. This was too terrifying. Not bad. God's might is like a prison, God's grace is like a tiger. This move shall be called God's judgment. Lingtian looked at the ball of light in his hand with a calm expression. He muttered to himself. Then, his body flashed and he landed in front of Huangfu Yuyan and the others. This move was a combination of the ice godhead and fire godhead's pressure. It had the power of ice and fire fused together. Its power was extremely terrifying and exceeded his imagination. Big brother Lingtian. Husband. Big brother. Young master. Little brother Lingtian. The girls were overjoyed. Although Li Lingtian's aura had changed a little, they were more than happy to see him unscathed. Besides, the stronger Li Lingtian was, the happier they were. Yes, how are you guys? Are you injured? Li Lingtian nodded with a smile on his face. The aura of the deep mountains had disappeared and he looked just like an ordinary young man. However, her temperament and elegance were even more otherworldly and mesmerizing. I'm fine. Your cultivation? You broke through? The dozen girls shook their heads happily, but they were curious about Li Lingtian's abilities. Lin Jirong was jolted awake at that moment. He came to Li Lingtian's side and looked at him curiously. The attack just now had completely shocked him. Even he did not know what moves he had to block this move. How confident was he to block this move? I've already reached the fourth sky of the martial saint realm. The 9 heavens of ice and fire have also reached the 5th heaven. Li Lingtian revealed his cultivation base with a faint smile. What? 4th heaven? You broke through 2 realms? You've already reached the 5th heaven of the 9 heavens of ice and fire. This is too fast. In an instant, everyone was shocked and could not believe Li Lingtian's words. However, they knew that Li Lingtian would not lie to them and there was no need for him to do so. Besides, based on his strength and cultivation, he had definitely achieved a breakthrough. Lin Jirong was speechless. He had broken through 2 realms in a row under such circumstances. At the same time, he had also broken through a divine power. What kind of concept was this? It was completely beyond his imagination. There was no such heaven-defying monster in the divine martial continent. Such a freak, did he want to let people live? However, they slowly got used to it and woke up from their shock. Most of them were happy for Li Lingtian. Now that Li Lingtian's cultivation base and abilities had improved, they were extremely excited. I recommend the new book, Ancient Sage Myriad Ancient King. Everyone is welcome to read it and save it. I need everyone's support. Only with everyone's support can the new book go further. Everyone, please collect the Eternal Holy King first. Well, look at it after you've fattened up. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 878, Trial 1. Sir Lingtian has just broken through. Let's find a place to rest first. This way, Sir Lingtian can also stabilize his cultivation realm. I'll be your guardian. Lin Jirong spoke to Li Lingtian after everyone congratulated him. He now understood that out of the dozen exceptional girls present, 6 of them were Li Lingtian's wives while the rest were his relatives. Even the Bei Mingxua sisters had a close relationship with Li Lingtian. These girls were not simple. Each of them was the most important person to Li Lingtian. Alright, let's rest for a day. Li Lingtian nodded. Initially, he was too busy with other matters, but he had just fused with the Godhead and had yet to get used to it. Moreover, there were still many things that needed to be resolved after the breakthrough. If they were not resolved, it would leave behind future problems for his cultivation. Then, the group quickly left and flew into the distance. After flying for a full hour, they finally found a better place. The fire spiritual energy in this place was also slightly weaker, so it was suitable for others to rest. To Li Lingtian and Xianyuan Yingying, the spirit qi did not affect them at all. However, Huangfu Yuyan and the rest had a single attribute and were used to the balanced spirit qi of the 5 elements. However, when they encountered a single attribute, it would affect their rest. After Li Lingtian and the others settled down, they began cultivating quietly by themselves. This time, he had obtained the will of the Great Path of Fire in the Dui Palace. The will of the Great Path of Fire had triggered the will of the Great Path of Water. He had never expected such a situation. If it wasn't for the ice and fire godheads, he might have vanished into thin air. Fortunately, this was a blessing in disguise. He had fused with the Godhead, and his cultivation had increased greatly. He had broken through to the 4th heaven martial saint in one go, and Bingao had also reached the 5th heaven. His strength was terrifying. Not only did he have desolate, but he also obtained the innate skill, God's judgment. He did not know how powerful the God's judgment was. He was also shocked when he saw Shiman Wushuang, who was at the 3rd heaven of the martial god realm, killed with a single strike. He had just broken through, and his cultivation and strength had increased greatly. He needed some time to adapt to his cultivation. In his eyes, other experts breaking through to the first stage would not affect him at all. However, if he broke through to the next stage, his cultivation would be heaven-defying and powerful. Now that he had reached the 4th sky of the martial saint realm and controlled the god's judgment and the 5th sky of Baron, his strength had reached a terrifying level. However, the fusion of the godhead still needed to be stabilized. Otherwise, the godhead would separate again. This time, he could not rest at ease because he had already obtained the will of water and the will of fire in the 9 temples. There were still 6 places that he had not gone to. After resting for 2 days, Lingtian led everyone to fly toward the Earth Palace. Although he hadn't completely fused with the Godhead in 2 days, he had already stabilized it. The Godhead was the source of power for experts above the true God level. Its power was unparalleled. With the Godhead, it also possessed divine might. Its current strength had already reached an unimaginable level. Big Brother Lingtian fused with an ice and fire godhood, causing the power of the Bingao to increase greatly. I wonder who's strong enough to be Big Brother Lingtian's match. Tang Zimeng was beside Lingtian as she spoke while flying. Her face was filled with joy. In my opinion, my husband's God's judgment is the most powerful. Shun Mayer chimed in as well. Lingtian's ability to eliminate Shiman Wushuang with one move after obtaining the fire will of the way from the bottom of the mountain was beyond their imagination. These 2 godheads have temporarily fused together. However, it will take some time before I can truly control them. The carefree immortal palace is filled with danger. There are still many things waiting for us to do. Therefore, we will leave the 2 godheads here for now. When we have free time in the future, we will cultivate and stabilize them. Lingtian spoke at a moderate pace with a faint smile on his face. His cultivation had increased greatly, and he was in a good mood. However, he was indeed happy that he had obtained such terrifying strength this time. However, he had yet to fully control this power. Only after he had complete control would he be able to unleash the full power of the ice and fire godheads. Sir Lingtian's God's judgment can't be described as terrifying. Even I'm confident that I can withstand this move. This move is no longer within the scope of power. It's a mysterious and ethereal technique of an almighty. Lin Zhirong took over the topic with a serious expression. In the past, Lingtian's status was only based on his alchemy skills and his reputation as the first divine alchemist. However, after witnessing Lingtian's true strength, he was shocked. The power was beyond his imagination. Now, don't make a move. Let me test the power of the divine judgment and see how powerful it is. Lingtian said earnestly. He was also eager to understand the power of his divine judgment. Only after truly understanding his own cultivation strength could he be confident in facing his enemies in the future. In any case, there was no one else here who knew him. As long as they encountered him, they would kill him. In this world, the strong were respected. Since he came to Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, he must have a purpose. He was either going to be killed by others or to kill others. Huangfu Yuyan and the others nodded in agreement with Lingtian's words. They were also curious to know how powerful the divine judgment that Lingtian had obtained was. Lin Zhirong and Bei Minxue were even more so. They wanted to understand how terrifying Lingtian was. At the same time, they were shocked. Lingtian was a martial saint powerhouse, yet he was using a martial god powerhouse as a practice. If word of this were to spread, the powerhouses of the divine martial continent would definitely drop their jaws. Following that, Li Lingtian led everyone in flight while Lin Zhirong and Bei Minxue concealed their cultivation base to the level of Martial Supreme. This way, the group's strength was completely disregarded by the powerhouses here. The strongest among them was Li Lingtian, who was at the fourth heaven of the Martial Saint realm. Even Xianyuan Yingying was only at the second heaven of the Martial Saint realm. This was because Li Lingtian and Xianyuan Yingying did not have any dual cultivation for the past 2 days. They did not cultivate together and did not share their cultivation base. A fourth sky martial saint in the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace was a suicidal existence. This was because the people who entered Xiaoyao Immortal Palace were all ninth firmament martial saints. Moreover, there were only a few ninth firmament martial saints. The rest were all martial god powerhouses. After a day, Li Lingtian and the others arrived at the front of the Kuan Palace. Although the Palace of Earth was underground, the experts here told him that they had arrived. Moreover, based on the senses of the 5 element saintly beings' fire will, the Palace of Earth was nearby. Rumble. Rumble. It was a huge mountain. The mountain was filled with destructive flames. The entire mountain was like a flaming mountain. At this moment, there were already 3 martial god experts here. 2 second firmament war gods and 1 third firmament war god. It was exactly the same situation as the last time they met in the Qian Palace. 2 weaker experts were fighting against the strongest expert. The 3 martial god experts in front of the mountain continued to bombard him, causing earth-shattering explosions. Although 2 second firmament experts had joined forces, they were completely incomparable in front of a third firmament war god. The will of the great path of fire. The will of the great path of fire of the Earth Palace. It's still earth fire. Li Lingtian looked at the raging flames in the mountain and felt the power of the flames. It was the terrifying fire will of the way. This will of the great path of fire was much stronger than the will of the great path of fire below the Dui Palace. Moreover, there was a golden page floating in the air. Li Lingtian's expression turned odd as he looked at the fire Dao intent and golden page. The Xiaoyao Immortal Palace opened once every 2,000 years. There was a reason why the paper pages in the other palaces had not been discovered. After all, they were protected by the terrifying will in the palace. But in this mountain, the will of the great path of fire was obvious, and the golden page was also exposed, so others could see it at a glance. Thinking of this, he was confused, but he quickly calmed down. He didn't want to think about things that he couldn't figure out. He would cross the bridge when he came to it. Sir Lingtian, which one do you want to deal with? Lin Zhirong and the others hid far away, watching the battle between the 3 powerhouses. Finally, he asked Li Lingtian about the 3 powerhouses. 2 of them were at the second heaven of the martial god realm while one of them was at the third heaven of the martial god realm. To a martial saint, these experts were a disaster of destruction. However, it was not much of a threat to a pervert like Li Lingtian. Nevertheless, it was impossible for him to face 3 people at once. It would depend on which martial god Li Lingtian was going to deal with. Let's go, you hold the fort for me. Li Lingtian did not answer the question. After he finished speaking, his body flashed and he flew swiftly toward the location of the battle. Huangfu Yuyan and the rest followed closely behind. With Li Lingtian and a third firmament martial god, there was no danger in the Xiaoyao Celestial Palace. Boom! 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 Soon, the group arrived at the battlefield. The arrival of Li Lingtian's group immediately attracted the attention of the 3 powerhouses. They were all shocked. They did not expect so many people to come at once. However, the strongest among them was only at the 4th sky of the martial saint realm. Such cultivation was completely courting death. It could not affect them at all. After Lin Zhirong disguised himself, no one recognized him. Otherwise, just Lin Zhirong alone was enough to make the 3 martial gods tremble. Get lost. The 3rd firmament martial god realm and the 2 second firmament martial god realm experts were engaged in a heated battle. When they saw Li Lingtian and the others, they roared in disdain. A mere martial saint and martial emperor realm expert dared to come here? Was he courting death? You're courting death. Li Lingtian's expression turned cold when he saw that the three martial god powerhouses were ignoring their presence. Step by step, he walked towards the place where the three of them were fighting. His expression was extremely calm. The three martial god powerhouses were shocked by Li Lingtian's action, thinking that he was about to die. No matter how powerful a fourth sky martial saint was, he was no match for a martial god. Moreover, a martial saint expert couldn't even enter the range of the battle between three martial gods. Naturally, he didn't care at all. Instead, he wanted to see his pressure and residual force wipe out this martial saint expert. Chapter 879, Judgment of God, 1. The three martial god powerhouses did not stop even after Li Lingtian's appearance. Instead, he circulated his true essence to the extreme, and the power of his attack was also destructive. However, the three of them were puzzled. They didn't know what this fourth sky martial saint young man wanted to do. He dared to provoke a martial god expert. Bang! In the air, Li Lingtian's vital essence was also activated and a shocking amount of vital essence burst forth. The power of the true origin of the fourth sky of the martial saint realm had already reached an unimaginable level for a martial god expert. When the true essence appeared, it caused a tremor in the air. This situation shocked the three martial god experts. They did not expect a fourth firmament martial saint youth's true essence to be so terrifying. All three of them could feel the threat of Li Lingtian's true essence. They stopped in their tracks and stared at Li Lingtian in horror. Cece, Cece. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The wind and the space raged, and the air was distorted. The entire world seemed to be destroyed. Li Lingtian stared coldly at the three martial god powerhouses with a cruel smile on his lips. Get lost. Get out of my sight in 3 seconds, or I'll kill you without mercy. The cold voice sounded like it came from hell. The three martial god experts could not help but tremble. Killing intent appeared on his face. He was a martial god realm expert, yet he was humiliated by a martial saint youth like this. A warrior could be killed, but not humiliated. What an arrogant tone. Junior, are you courting death? Go to hell. Upon hearing Li Lingtian's words, the three martial god powerhouses were instantly enraged as they shouted angrily. At the same time, the true essence in his body was circulated to the extreme, and the air and the space was torn apart inch by inch. For a moment, this space seemed to be about to be destroyed, and the atmosphere in the air was extremely strange. Boom! At that moment, 3 terrifying auras were pressing down on Li Lingtian. The three martial god powerhouses seemed to want to crush Li Lingtian to death with their auras. Only by doing so could they display his status and power as a martial god. Pressure. Are you even worthy? Let's experience true pressure. The might of heaven and earth, divine might. As Li Lingtian felt the terrifying pressure coming at him, his face revealed a look of disdain that made the three martial gods go berserk. The pressure of a martial god realm expert directly crushed a martial saint realm expert. They did not expect this young man to ignore their pressure. They were extremely furious, but they were extremely curious. He did not know what kind of ability this young man had to actually dare to say such words. However, their expressions changed drastically. Between heaven and earth, Li Lingtian hovered in the air as a destructive pressure burst forth. However, this pressure did not only come from Li Lingtian but also from heaven and earth. Just as this power appeared, another mysterious pressure appeared. This mysterious pressure immediately caused the expressions of the three martial god experts to change. Their expressions gradually turned ugly. Lin Jirong, who was standing at the side, naturally knew why the three martial god powerhouses were so shocked. At the same time, he was extremely pleased and even felt more at ease. This was because when he first discovered this pressure, he was also extremely shocked. Even Shiman Wushuang, a third heaven martial god realm expert, did not dare to move. He was the same. Divine might? It's Shen Wei. The three martial god realm experts felt a terrifying pressure at this moment. This pressure could directly wipe them out, making them feel wary. The expression on his face was extremely ugly. He had never thought that he would encounter divine might in this place. It was the kind of divine might that could destroy the world, an existence that surpassed divine might. Boom! With a loud explosion, Lingtian's power of heaven and earth struck the three martial god powerhouses' pressure with divine might. The might of heaven and earth and divine might pressed down on the three of them from all directions. At the same time, the color of the world changed as if the end of the world had arrived. The three martial god experts were already shocked to the point of no return. In front of this divine might, their pressure was simply child's play, completely not worth mentioning. Between the two, it was completely insignificant. In front of this destructive divine might, the pressure of a martial god powerhouse was a joke. Seeing the destructive divine might approaching, the three of them had already lost the consciousness to resist. The pressure that erupted from their bodies also suffered a destructive blow. It was not just the three of them. Even Lin Jirong and the rest were stunned, and they saw Lingtian's intimidating aura. Lingtian hovered in the air. At this moment, he looked down on the world like a true god. This was the powerful sublimation of the pressure after the fusion of the divine persona. With that explosion, the three martial god powerhouses were thrown out, and their entire bodies were suppressed. The pressure collided with the pressure. The outcome of the losing side was unimaginable. Pfft! The sound of blood spurting out could be heard as the three martial god powerhouses spurted out blood. Their faces were pale as they retreated continuously. Even if they stopped, they could not do so because they had no chance of self-control in the face of Lingtian's divine might. Although there was only a trace of divine might in the power of heaven and earth, this trace of divine might was enough. I told you to scram. I've already given you a chance. You don't know how to cherish it, and you're still so ignorant. Ignorant trash, you're a waste of resources left in this world. Accept my judgment, the judgment of God. Lingtian's eyes were devoid of emotion. The corners of his mouth were filled with cruelty and his face was calm. He waved his hand, and without the slightest hesitation, without any incantation, he simply waved his hand. Lin Jirong was puzzled. This action didn't seem like a big battle at all. It was more like a mosquito being fanned. Initially, he had hoped to learn something from Lingtian's divine judgment, but he was disappointed. However, even though Lingtian's simple swing seemed simple and ordinary, it was imbued with a supreme profound meaning and a supreme trajectory. Phew! The air was torn apart, and the space between heaven and earth was rapidly compressed. A pressure comparable to that of a true god condensed. At the same time, the water and fire Tao wills in the air fused together. Lingtian's entire body was like a world of ice and fire. With one strike, the world was destroyed. Bang, bang, bang. The heaven and earth had restrained him. However, Lingtian retracted his palm after he struck out. He looked at the three martial god powerhouses with a hint of curiosity and anticipation in his eyes. At this moment, three muffled sounds appeared in the air. The three martial god realm experts' eyes were filled with shock. They gradually became terrified, and then they became desperate. After three muffled sounds, the three of them looked ashen. The world fell silent as Lingtian's eyes were filled with madness. Ha, ha. The might of heaven and earth, the judgment of the gods, examining all things in the world. With me as the world, I can observe the world. Anyone below the third firmament of the war god realm is nothing but an ant. Lingtian laughed out loud in an arrogant voice. This was the first time he was so excited and arrogant. This was because the three martial god experts did not resist at all in front of the god's judgment, but they lost their vitality. The judgment of God could destroy the world and kill people without them noticing. Swoosh. As a breeze blew past, the three martial god experts turned into ashes and disappeared from the world. 3 storage bags fell from the sky. Apart from Li Lingtian's laughter, the entire space was silent. After his laughter, the entire space fell silent. Lin Zirong's eyes were filled with shock. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that a fourth sky martial saint could kill 3 martial god realm experts so easily. Even if he was beaten to death, he would never believe that the divine martial continent had such a heaven-defying divine ability. This divine ability had already surpassed any skill in the divine martial continent. It was completely the technique of a mighty person. He had never seen such a strange and terrifying sacred art. Swoosh. Li Lingtian did not say a word when he saw Lin Zirong and the rest's shocked expressions. His body flashed and he quickly flew up the mountain. The mountain was like a flaming mountain. It was 1,000 miles in circumference, and the raging flames seemed to be burning the world. But at this moment, he did not hesitate at all. He turned into a meteor and flew into the depths of the mountain. He floated in the middle of the mountain, allowing the flames to corrode him. However, the terrifying flames were like a docile kitten when they reached Li Lingtian's side. In front of the flaming sacred body, the flames were simply a tonic. However, Li Lingtian did not let his guard down at this moment as the terrifying fire will of the Great Path continued to enter his body. In his awareness, the will of the Great Path was constantly flashing. On the golden page in the middle of the mountain, mysterious characters were transmitted into Li Lingtian's awareness. What a terrifying God's judgment. Lin Zirong woke up at this time, but his face was still filled with shock. As he looked at Li Lingtian in the distance, he activated his divine consciousness and began to protect Li Lingtian. He would kill any powerhouse that came his way. I didn't expect Lingtian's God's judgment to reach such a level. Actually, we don't know the true terror of God's judgment. He doesn't know either. That's right. Big Brother Lingtian killed 3 martial gods with a single strike. You can't even see how terrifying the God's judgment is. However, without the might of the heavens and earth and the divine might, I believe that the martial god experts would have more chances to resist. When the time comes, I'll let Big Brother Lingtian cast the God's judgment without using his divine might. The girls were discussing among themselves. With Lin Zirong protecting them, they were not worried about Li Lingtian's safety. Furthermore, Li Lingtian's strength had reached a terrifying level. While the girls were discussing Li Lingtian, he closed his eyes slightly. Feeling the terrifying and powerful will of the Great Path of Fire, the will of the Great Path of Fire kept entering his sea of consciousness, and the golden page spun even faster. The raging flames on the mountain gradually engulfed Li Lingtian before he vanished into the raging flames. Chapter 880, The Terror of God's Judgment, 1. With the ice and fire godheads, as well as the 2 times he had sensed the will of the Great Path of Fire, he could not be more familiar with the will of the Great Path of Fire on the mountain. Even though the fire will of the Great Path was terrifying and destructive, it was a piece of cake for Li Lingtian with the flaming sacred body. The Qian Palace and the Qin Palace belonged to the water element, while the Dui Palace and the Kuan Palace belonged to the fire element. Heavenly water and earth fire. Heavenly water was already complete, and earth fire was already half complete. Moreover, when he had obtained this half of earth fire, he had also fused with the ice-type godhead and the fire-type godhead. Now that he had comprehended the fire will of the earth palace, he felt extremely relaxed. Moreover, it did not affect his body or cultivation at all. On the contrary, it was extremely beneficial. As the fire will gradually fused, the golden page gradually fell. A moment later, Li Lingtian opened his eyes. His gaze was as sharp as lightning. The golden page had already turned into a fragment that fell to the ground. Li Lingtian grabbed it with one hand and the fragment landed in his hand. He smiled when he saw the word Kuan on the fragment. The heavenly water extinguished the earth fire, and the raging flames continued to grow. Li Lingtian's fire will of the Great Path burst forth from his body. At the same time, the fire divinity unleashed a shocking power. He activated the ice godhead and chanted the incantation. Immediately, the water of the heavenly river descended from the 9 heavens and landed on the mountain. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying flames were drowned by the water of the heavenly river. However, at this moment, the flames erupted again. On one side was the water of the heavenly river, and on the other side was the terrifying flames. At this time, the water of the heavenly river and the flames were even more terrifying. Lingtian continued to absorb the heavenly river's water and flames. 2 streams of terrifying and powerful spirit chi were continuously extracted by Lingtian. The world shook as if it was the end of the world. His fire Dao intent was complete, his water Dao intent was complete, and his ice and fire godhoods were also complete. Boom! With Lingtian as the center, the destructive pressure was felt within 100 miles. This pressure caused everything in the world to tremble. All living beings respect me. All living beings in the world regard me as a saint. Lingtian's eyes gleamed as his body exuded a destructive aura. Everything within 100 miles was suppressed by a terrifying divine might. Even a third heaven martial god powerhouse like Lin Zhirong could not resist it. Other than shock, there was also worship in his eyes, a kind of submission from divine might. Huangfu Yuyan and the rest were extremely excited. They were in dual cultivation with Lingtian, so they were naturally not afraid of such godly might. However, Ge and the others were affected. They could not resist Lingtian's divine might and could not help but lower their heads. What terrifying divine might! What kind of existence is this? It actually has divine might. Could it be an ancient expert? In the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, the pressure of the divine sense was suppressed. The divine sense could only extend within 10 miles, and the pressure was only a few miles. However, Lingtian's divine might extended out and suppressed everything within 100 miles. The few martial god experts felt the terrifying divine might, and their faces revealed shocked expressions. They wanted to rush to the Earth Palace, but they were shocked to discover such terrifying divine might. They did not dare to come again. However, there were still people who wanted to die. The more terrifying the situation, the greater the rewards. A third sky martial god expert felt the destructive divine might. His expression kept changing, but after his expression stabilized, his eyes became resolute. He quickly rushed toward the Earth Palace. He thought that the divine might came from some heaven-defying treasure. If he obtained this treasure, then it would be heaven-defying. Swoosh! A figure appeared in Lingtian's line of sight. It was dressed in gray and exuded a terrifying aura. A third firmament martial god powerhouse's entire person seemed to have fused into one with this world. When this expert arrived in front of the mountain, he felt traces of divine might. This divine might came from the depths of the mountain. There were also more than 10 girls in front of the mountain. These girls were all peerless and beautiful, causing the world to change color. However, these girls were all at the martial supreme realm and were not worth mentioning at all. At this moment, he was not in the mood to care about these girls at all. Instead, he was focused on the treasures in the depths of the mountain. Junior, get lost. You are not qualified to obtain the treasures in this place. Wu Yun revealed a disdainful expression because he had seen this young man before. He was the young man who was selling tokens outside. Without Lin Zhirong here, he naturally didn't take martial saints seriously. Treasures? Lingtian's expression froze as he could not understand what treasure this third firmament martial god was talking about. However, he immediately understood that this martial god must have treated his divine might as a treasure and thought that it was the divine might emitted by the treasure. Thinking of this, his expression relaxed, but a hint of cruelty appeared on his lips. This isn't a treasure? Are you trying to fool me? In 3 seconds, either get lost or die here. Wu Yun looked at Lingtian's expression and thought that Lingtian was bluffing him. His expression turned ugly. A martial saint actually acted dumb in front of him. He was really courting death. However, Lingtian's next words made Wu Yun go berserk. Get lost? I'll give you 3 seconds. Either you die or you die. Lingtian's expression was calm and relaxed. The cruelty at the corner of his mouth turned into a smile, but Huangfu Yuyan and the rest understood that Li Lingtian's smile was already filled with killing intent. Wu Yun would never have the chance to leave this place. Wu Yun's words were countered by him, and it was even more domineering than what Wu Yun had said. It was simply an insult to be confronted by a martial saint powerhouse like this. Detestable, extremely detestable. Today, if I don't burn your bones and scatter your ashes, I swear I'm not human. Wu Yun's face was filled with anger, and he was about to go berserk. As the sound of his voice faded, the aura around his entire body skyrocketed, and a mighty pressure erupted violently. He was just a martial saint powerhouse. In front of a third firmament martial god, he was simply an ant. Trash. Li Lingtian's eyes were filled with disdain. With a wave of his hand, his entire person was extremely unrestrained. His palm waved, and his movements were extremely elegant. Accept my judgment, the divine judgment. The cold voice was like the scrutiny of a god. Between heaven and earth, the destructive divine might seem to want to squeeze the world apart. At this moment, Wu Yun's eyes revealed a look of fear. Initially, he wanted to suppress Li Lingtian with his pressure. However, he was immediately threatened by death the moment he unleashed his pressure. The young man's movements were beyond the realm of a warrior. Normally, one would have to block or dodge the opponent's pressure. However, Li Lingtian ignored the pressure and attacked directly. Moreover, its power made him feel the threat of death. Only heaven-defying destruction could make him feel the threat of death. Heavenly silkworm transformation, golden cicada shedding its shell. Realizing the danger of destruction, he did not dare to use his pressure anymore. He quickly used the terrifying heavenly silkworm transformation. No matter what the reason was, he had to escape first. However, it was already too late. An invisible attack pressed down on him. Pfft! Ah! His body twisted and he was thrown out quickly. He spat out a mouthful of blood and screamed. His entire body turned into an arc as he fiercely fell to the ground. The strong impact caused Wu Yun to leave a deep mark on the ground. Pfft! He coughed out another mouthful of blood. His face was pale and his eyes were filled with fear. His gaze was filled with fear as he looked up into the sky. He saw Li Lingtian's figure appear in the sky without any warning. His gaze was like a god scrutinizing gaze. Under the judgment of God, everything is an ant. You are no longer of any use. Die. Li Lingtian stared coldly at Wu Yun on the ground as he spoke coldly. He was extremely satisfied. He now had a better understanding of the power of God's judgment. After using it at full power, he could even beat a third firmament war god to death. If used properly, it would definitely be the bane of the war god. This time, he didn't use the might of heaven and earth to resist the opponent's pressure. Instead, he directly used the divine judgment to attack the opponent, catching the opponent off guard. However, even so, the other party had used a life-saving technique. In the face of the life-saving technique of a third heaven martial god expert, the other party was still able to beat the third heaven martial god expert half to death. One could imagine the power of the divine judgment. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Lingtian stretched out his hands and extended them into the air. Instantly, the world trembled. A ball of flames and a ball of ice appeared in his palm. Two extreme attributes appeared in the air. The two extreme attributes between heaven and earth did not repel each other at all. On the contrary, they quickly fused together. However, when they fused, the world was filled with the aura of destruction. A destructive aura swept through the space as Li Lingtian quickly put his hands together. At the instant his hands joined together, an aura of death, destruction, extermination, and taboos appeared in the world. The four auras quickly fused at this time. After the fusion, the world was completely desolate. 9 heavens of ice and fire desolation. A beam of light shot out, ignoring the space around it as it shot towards Wu Yun on the ground. The entire process seemed to take a long time, but it only took a moment. Wu Yun felt Li Lingtian's murderous intent and was horrified to death. However, he was almost half dead when he was struck by the first destructive attack. Now, he did not even have the chance to resist. He could only watch as the pillar of light bombarded him. Tianhe's life turned into a spark of fire, a spark of fire. Wu Yun's eyes were filled with viciousness. Even if it meant destruction, he would drag Li Lingtian down with him. Suddenly, a strange aura appeared in the air. After it appeared, it bombarded Li Lingtian directly and avoided the beam of light. In this situation, it was completely a suicidal tactic. He didn't defend and directly attacked the other party. Moreover, he had used the terrifying Starfire Prairie. This Starfire Prairie was a forbidden art that was cast by a third firmament war god by burning his life force. In the air, 2 destructive attacks burst out, but the 2 attacks missed each other. Their goal was to destroy each other. Seeing this, Lin Zhirong, Huang Fuyuyan, and the others were shocked. Their expressions changed drastically. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.